of the meeting, voting will take place via roll call. The meeting is being live streamed to enable public access. Please ensure that your microphones are muted other than when you're speaking, and to prevent any other disruptions, please use the electronic hand raising function available in Microsoft Teams to indicate a wish to speak. If this is not possible, for example, those of you on telephone, please speak up to indicate your wish to join the debate. If you are struggling, let your group leaders know. I don't think there are any apologies for absence, but if anybody knows of any, if they could indicate now, and we'll make a note of it. Speak up if you're not on the screen. No. Turning to agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Monitoring Officer Advice has confirmed that members who are also North Yorkshire County Council members are likely to be required under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare a personal interest. Those members have received direct Monitoring Officer advice on this matter and, based upon that advice, are declaring a personal interest, but are satisfied that their personal interests have not also pecuniary interests under the Code. Those members have also confirmed that they will be taking part tonight with an open mind, taking into account all relevant information prior to making a decision, and exercising their judgment in the best interests of the public and this Council. This is taken as declared by those members, unless any of those members have anything further to add. Do any members have any additional interest to declare under the Members' Code of Conduct? If you'd make yourself known now. I don't see anybody, so we'll move on. Turning now to agenda item 4, submission of the KPMG case for change. Councillor Duncan, please briefly introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The meeting tonight is perhaps the most important meeting in our 46 years of history. Members will see on page 3 the recommendations, of which there are 2, which is to approve the submission of the outline case for change to MHCLG set out in the appendix with a deadline at the 9th of November. And the second recommendation is to authorise the Chief Executive to finalise that case for change and submit the final proposal to MHCLG at the deadline of the 9th of December. I do have more that I'd like to say, Mr. Chairman, but clearly we've got a long way to go, I think, in terms of tonight's debate, so I'll leave it there, only to say that I'm very happy to take questions from members on this topic, and hopefully we'll try to give as much information as I possibly can. A very important item this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I will open it to the floor for questions. Councillor Burr, I have you first.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, Councillor Burr.
Thank you. Ryedale has been plunged into lockdown today. Concerns are for our residents, businesses, the vulnerable, our care homes and for mental health. This is something that we cannot ignore. Why in these uncertain times and in a global pandemic are we being forced to consider reorganisation? Whatever your view on this, it's crazy to force reorganisation on us now rather than us focus on the pandemic. However, we seem to have a government who are obsessed and adamant to reorganise, and this must take place. Do you agree, as our leader, that this is not the right time to be dealing with reorganisation in a crisis? Thank you.
Councillor Duncan, before you start, I'm just going to let Councillor Paul Andrews know that I can see him waiting to question. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Councillor Burr, for your question. As you know, as we were both there at the County Council meeting just yesterday, when the County Council voted overwhelmingly in favour of submission, that my view is your view, that now is not the right time to be embarking on this process. Clearly, people in the community are worried, they're facing uncertainty, they're facing hardship. Now is not the right time, I feel, to be going down the track of reorganisation. There is going to be significant disruption from this process, and my grave worry is that we are distracted from the task which we all have as councillors and our officers, which is to support the community at this time. Sadly, the County Council, against my wishes and your wishes, Councillor Burr, voted overwhelmingly 57-12 to submit. That vote triggers this process and means that this evening I feel very strongly that we have no real alternative but to vote to submit an alternative plan in the interests of democratic decision making. The government very clearly, the invitation still stands from the government. The county vote has gone in, the fact that the county submission has gone in, and therefore I feel that we must respond to ensure that the government minister, the Secretary of State, has all of the information at his disposal to be able to make the very best choice in the interest of the residents of North Yorkshire and York.
Councillor Burr, before offering you a supplementary, I also have Councillor Keel. I'm aware that you're wanting to question. Councillor Burr, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you for that. However, I do feel that we have been put in an impossible position at the moment. And yes, you say that we have to submit an alternative bid, but my firm belief is that we shouldn't have been put in this position from our government at this moment in time. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Councillor Burr, for that. I agree with you that we are, I feel, in an impossible position. But what I would just like to say, and I have them handily printed out, that I have written to the Prime Minister. There's a letter here on the 25th of September. I've written to the Prime Minister again, along with the 7 district and borough leaders from North Yorkshire and district and borough leaders from Cumbria on the 8th of October. Wrote again to the Secretary of State and the local government minister on the 29th of October, 2 letters. And you have seen the response that we have received to those letters. After weeks of waiting, we received acknowledgement from Luke Hall. His view is that the invitation stands. And given that one authority has submitted a proposal, we are in an impossible position, I agree with you. But this is the position that we are in. And tonight we have to make a call and we have to make a judgment about what we do. And as I say, I feel that we have no option to go forward with the submission. So I think we're on the same page here. I've tried my best. Unfortunately, I failed to stop this process at this time, but I have tried to do so.
Thank you. Before handing over to Councillor Paul Andrews, Councillor Burr, if you could switch off your hand and then you won't confuse me even further. Thank you. Councillor Paul Andrews, a question.
Yes, Chair. I've gone through this KPMG document team, and to be quite honest,
I can't hear it, Chair.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Come on.
I can, but it's very faint, Paul.
No, we can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Well, let me see what I can do.
I can hear you, Paul, if that helps, and I can maybe relay when I give the answer.
Is that better? Can you hear me now? Can you all hear me now?
We can, far away.
No.
Right.
You'll have to shout, Paul, because you're very, very, very faint. We can't hear.
I can't hear.
We might be able to hear him better if people didn't interrupt.
Yeah. I have looked at this document KPMG, and I have to say, most of it appears to be gobbledygook. It's just one blind statement following another, and it's very difficult to find out the rationale and the logic behind it. However, when you go to the appendix is written in a way which is intelligible, is written in English, and you can understand it. And the appendix, strangely enough, seems to lead to a different conclusion to the one in the body of the document. And that conclusion is the local delivery model, which is specified in Appendix 4, which is on page 126 to 128. And on page 128, it gives key potential benefits, which presumably means that these are advantages which the option which is being proposed do not have. And the key potential benefits are reduced reorganisation, complexity and cost, maintaining localism, local knowledge, identity and accountability, service delivery, strong association with the mayor, and flexibility. Now, it seems to me, Keane, that the actual body of the document, the actual appendix of the document, seems to be recommending an option called local delivery model, which basically includes keeping councils as they are, but working closely with a single mayoral authority, which would take the place of the county council. Now, what I can't understand, Keane, is why it is that we are not pursuing this option, and why this district council cannot simply take the view that with the idea that we have to combine unitary authorities, and still, but when in fact we could do something completely different. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews, for your question. You are right to point to Appendix 4 and the local delivery model. Its inclusion is there to show the journey which we have gone on as 7 district and borough leaders from the start to the finish. And when we started the process, we had no preconceived idea whatsoever about the outcome which we wanted. KPMG were commissioned to provide an objective and independent analysis of all the options. And you'll see in the report that they started with 10 options, working their way down to 2 with the county proposal for comparison purposes, down to 1, which was the east and west proposal. However, as part of that work, they did look at the local delivery model as an option that in effect is closest to the status quo than any of the others. It does not create new unitary authorities, but as you've pointed out, has the district and borough councils and City of York that exists at the moment at one level and a mayoral combined authority for strategic joint working at the level above it. And the reason why this option ultimately was not selected and not taken forward in the body of the document was that it does not exist in that format anywhere else at the present time. It also does not comply with the invitation which we have received from government, which is the creation of unitary authorities of between 300 and 600,000 people. So while there was support for this among some leaders, most strongly from Craven District Council, the feeling was that this wasn't going to be a viable way forward. That being said, we felt it was important that this was in the appendix because it tells a story of which KPMG went on, and also because it allows the government minister to see a potential way of doing things that, as you have said, does have benefits and advantages. And it is a model which, if the Secretary of State was minded to do so, could take forward. It's worth pointing out that we are voting this evening to submit the whole KPMG document, including this appendix. So this option will land on the Minister's desk and will be able to be considered by civil servants.
Councillor Andrews, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Chair. Well, in that case, Keane, why can we not, in our recommendation supporting the submission of this document, specifically in the resolution to support it, draw the Secretary of State's attention to Appendix 4 and ask him specifically to look at it, rather than just leave it as an appendix at the back of the main document. Could you consider that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Andrews, for your question. As I think you've heard from my answer to Councillor Burr's question, I do have some frustrations with the Secretary of State at this point in time, but one thing that I'm not prepared to do is to submit a document and then tell him which pages to read and which pages not to read. Him and the team of civil servants are perfectly capable of digesting this document and reading this document in its whole form. And you will notice in the recommendations, it states very clearly that we are approving the submission of the outline case for change to MHCLG. It does not say which sections of this document we are submitting and which bits we aren't. The whole thing is going forwards, and I think that does adequately cover it. And I think it does allow the Secretary of State to do something different to what's been proposed by the County Council and what is in the substantial part of the document, which is the East and West proposal.
Thank you. I have Councillor Keel, Councillor Mackenzie and Councillor Rain wishing to speak, to ask questions. Councillor Keel to start with, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would like to ask a question about recommendation little b as part of the recommendations this evening. Could I ask what the process is going to be for the Chief Executive to finalise the case for change? Are the group leaders going to be involved in that process? Obviously, it's a relatively short time period in which to pull that together, but it would be very helpful to know how the Chief Executive proposes to do that, and in fact, as I say, whether group leaders will be involved or whether other members will be involved in that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keel, for your question, which I think is a pertinent one and an important one. What I would say is throughout this piece of work, it has been a partnership approach. So in effect, 7 different district and borough councils commissioned KPMG and have worked with KPMG on production of this document. Chief executives and leaders have had to do a great deal of compromise, long discussions to get to this point. And we reached from having no consensus whatsoever to having a document that we feel that we could all get behind and take forward to our councils. So we have that there, which is in effect the outline, and that is what will go to government by November the 9th. What will happen between tonight, when the final district and borough full council meetings take place, is those district and borough councils that have submitted this document will be able to work together, chief execs, leaders and other members from those councils, to devise some further detail, which clearly we all, I think, are looking for. We all have questions, we all have issues which we want to be resolved. So if we don't submit this evening, we won't be able to take any further part in that work and won't be able to take any further part in shaping the process. If we do, we clearly can. I think your question, Councillor Keir, is about having the widest possible involvement. And what I would like to say is actually, this is something which I don't think should be limited just to group leaders. I think actually we should be able to involve all members of the council. And I suppose I would make a request verbally at the full council meeting right now that our chief executive does hold a further member briefing or multiple member briefings between now and the submission date on December the 9th. That being said, it is important to recognise that we can't devise just ourselves the detail. There is going to have to be a point of contact with the other chief execs, the other leaders and other members, because all will have different views about how things can and should work into the future. But I would like to give a commitment to you and to other members that if we do go forward submitting this document today, we are going to be able to continue with that work, and that I would want the widest possible pool of people to be involved from the members. I think also worth referencing the staff as well, who they're doing this job on a daily basis. They know how we deliver our services, and we should be learning from them and taking on board their expertise and their knowledge in this process.
Councillor Keel, before offering you a supplementary, I'll just let members know that I know who is wanting to ask questions. Councillors Mackenzie, Rain, Bailey, Ryby, Garbutt-Moore and Goodrick. Councillor Keel, if you have a supplementary.
No, I don't really have a supplementary question, just to say that I am reassured to hear that's going to happen, although I do have concerns about the timescale. It's only a month, but yeah, I'm reassured by that answer. Thank you.
Can I just say, Mr. Chairman, in response to that as well, that I am concerned about the timeline. We got this letter on the 8th of October. We were told outline proposals by the 8th of November, full submissions by the 9th, the 9th of December, which clearly is a ridiculous timetable. And if we hadn't have commissioned this piece of work by KPMG back in July, we would not be in a position where we could actually decide and debate anything this evening. So I think it was the right decision to do that, but we are really up against it.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. I've had my hand up for a while now and you didn't call my name out. If you could add my name to the list.
I will do. Thank you, Councillor Frank. I can't see you on the screen. Are you on the phone?
Mr. Chairman?
No, I'm on the...
I do apologise. Councillor Frank, I will add you to the list.
I've had my hand up for a while.
Thanks. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Duncan, as you've already alluded to, this is a very important decision for us to make as a council. Quite possibly the most important one we will make in this council. We've talked a lot about debates. Just for purposes of refreshing all our memories, can you remind us, please, what updates and consultations have taken place with members just to help us with this? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie, for your question. And I think you are right to say this is a really important issue. And it is one that I feel our Chief Executive and myself as leader of the council have appraised members of throughout, kept members up to date and informed. We've held a series of briefings. There's also been various email bulletins as well as we've gone through this process. Members of the council of all groups have asked me a great deal of questions, and I've endeavoured at all times to respond. The latest communication that I've we don't really have an option but to be discussing this evening.
Before going to Councillor Bailey, I also have Councillor Mason wishing to question, adding to the list. So, Councillor Bailey, your question.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you assure me that the submission, if submitted, will be closely linked to the significant funding and environmental opportunities that have been worked up in the asks for North Yorkshire? It's obviously important that those two things go together, although they're slightly separate.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey, for your question. And I think it is perhaps easy to forget why really the government is embarking on this process, which is really as the key to unlocking the devolution deal for York and North Yorkshire and delivering on the asks, which some councils, and I must stress, not ours, have so far agreed. And there is some really ambitious items within that ask document. And at the very heart of the piece of work that KPMG has done has been a consideration of how this will fit in with delivering the devolution asks. They've gone into great detail to look at economic activity, to look at key projects, to look at carbon negativity, carbon emissions, and how each council can play a role. And what is important to recognise here is that whatever we end up with as a result of this process, be it the county council proposal, which is 2 unitaries, one covering the city of York at 200,000 people, one covering North Yorkshire at 620,000 people, or the east and the west, two roughly equal local authorities. Both of them, whichever option we get, they'll be coming together. And the two leaders of those authorities will sit in the cabinet of the mayor covering the whole of the patch. The view very strongly expressed in the KPMG report is that you need equity in that relationship. And you need two equal partners that can really work together. If one fails, the whole partnership fails. If one fails, we don't succeed in delivering the devolution asks. And that for me is really crucial and really important. And I would also just like to say, I do know that there are mixed views amongst members about devolution and about the proposal for us to move forward into that direction. We are not going through this unitary process tonight to achieve that. We're going through this tonight and having the discussion tonight because our hand has been forced by another authority, which is County Council, to submit their proposal, and we are responding. I do personally believe that devolution is the right thing to do, but that is not why we're going through this process. And I do believe as well that the East and West proposal is really the very best one to deliver devolution and to deliver it in the right way.
Councillor Bailey, have you got a supplementary?
No, thanks, Chair.
Before going to Councillor Ryedale, I'll let members, Councillors Garbett, Moore, Goodrick, Frank, Mason and Oxley are waiting for a question. Councillor Ryedale, over to you for your question.
My concern and my question is, thank you, Keane. I was unsure about the difference between the North Yorkshire County Council proposal and the KPMG one. That is quite clear to me that you keep York out of and with the North Yorkshire on their own, and with ours we are lumped in with York. So I question the KPMG report on two main reasons. One, I think I heard when we were being briefed the other night that a lot of the assumptions that are made are based not on facts, but on assumptions. Now, my understanding of making assumptions, you get the facts as clearly as you can, and then it's difficult to get the right assumption. So I much doubt their assumptions to be accurate. The other thing is, yeah, that they admit they've not spoken of had dialogue with York, and yet we're going to be lumped together with York, who don't want to be lumped with us. So there are quick sort of about relationships that I want to challenge, really. That if you have a relationship with a group of people and they're non-conciliatory relationship, the answer is absolute disaster. If you have one where there is conciliatory, it's still one hell of a gamble, and I think it is a gamble that we're lumped in with York. So I am really unsure that I want to support the KPMG document. Thank you.
Councillor Ryby, we're in questions at the moment. It sounded like you're answering to a debate. Have you a question for the leader?
The question is that am I right in thinking that we have no dialogue with York?
Thank you, Councillor Ryby, for your question. We have had dialogue with York, albeit very short and not particularly nice dialogue. As we know, and as I think members are aware, the City of York Council has resolved, and I must stress this is the council that has resolved, to have no change from its current footprint. What I would also like to say is that the district and borough councils in North Yorkshire, they do not wish to be part of, I would imagine, a North Yorkshire council, the proposal that's coming from North Yorkshire County Council. Whichever option that we end up with, there is unlikely to be, I think, impossible actually, for there to be an option that everybody can get behind. Whichever option we end up with, including the status quo, there is going to be one or more authorities that are going to be unhappy. And I think it's worth pointing out that with the North Yorkshire and York option, there is probably going to be 7 district and borough councils, ourselves included, who will be unhappy to be grouped into that authority. York and North Yorkshire will probably be happy, but the other 7 wouldn't be. In the East and West proposal, we're going to have, I understand, at the end of this, York and North Yorkshire that are unhappy, but probably 7 authorities would prefer that option to the other. So whichever option we get, we're going to have somebody that is unhappy. And I do find it interesting that people seem to be putting more weight on the views of City of York Council than they do to be putting in terms of the weight of their own council. And I just find it bizarre because whatever happens with this, the government is going to decide. And the government can come up with an option, rightly or wrongly, that compels local authorities to take part. And that is really important to point out. The other point I would make very clearly as well is that you may not like this report, Councillor Ryby, and you may not like the contents of it, but the fact is that we commissioned somebody independent from the council to do a piece of work on our behalf, and they've come to a conclusion based on evidence, based on facts, and it will be wrong, I feel, for us to have paid for a piece of work and commissioned a piece of work, for us then to say, hand over thousands of pounds to KPMG for something we then ultimately don't put forward. I feel like that would be a mistake, and it would also mean that we deny Ryedale District Council, both me and you, the opportunity to have a say. The county councillors, they're now part of this process, and I would be part of the process technically at that level as well. But Ryedale District councillors wouldn't be if we choose not to go forward. I think that really is the key issue here, that the minister should have the 2 things on his desk and all councils should be able to help shape the process.
Councillor Ryby, have you a supplementary question?
You would probably say it's a statement rather than a question, but I pose it as a question, and that is that it is not necessarily right to accept the KPMG report because we spent a lot of money. I've spent things on things in the past, a lot of money, and found they're no good, so I've discarded them and said they're no good. So I don't think you should accept it just because we've spent a lot of money on it.
You're quite right, it was a statement, not a question. If the leader wants to say anything further on that.
Only to say that if we don't submit this document this evening, our role in shaping the future of local government in North Yorkshire ends. We have buried our head in the sand and we can play no further role.
Before going to Councillor Garbutt-Moore, I have himself, Councillor Goodrick, Councillor Frank, Councillor Mason, Councillor Oxley and Councillor Delaney wishing to ask questions. Councillor Garbutt-Moore.
Thank you, Chairman. Since raising my hand, Councillor Duncan has kind of touched on the answer to my question. But I'm going to ask it anyway. You might be able to elaborate some more. What consultations have taken place with the staff at Ryedale? I know that there's been, the chief executive's been involved, and you've talked about involving members, which is great. But what consultations with staff have taken place, and also moving forward, will there be further consultation? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garbutt. I think that is a really important question. And what I would say is that as councillors, I think first and foremost, we're accountable to the public. We take our orders from them, not from our staff. But our staff, I think, are our most important asset, and we will be able to do nothing, we'll be able to achieve nothing without them. So throughout this process, I've engaged heavily with members of staff at all levels and across all departments, as has the Chief Executive. I have personally attended 2 briefings that have been open to all members of Ryedale staff. The first was on September the 2nd. The second was just a few hours ago, held earlier today. And there has also been consultations with the unions who have met and have discussed this issue. And I have received a letter from the Unison branch of Ryedale, which I think I haven't been able to have a chance to share because it's only arrived just shortly before the meeting. But I am happy to share the details of the letter and read it to members and circulate it later this evening. But it reads, "Dear Councillor Duncan, I would advise that at a meeting last night of union members, it unanimously agreed to support the East-West proposal for the reorganisation of the North Yorkshire and York local authorities. This was attended by about 20% of Ryedale District Council Unison members, and we hope to follow this up in order to reflect a higher percentage. Ryedale Unison is unsure at this time whether that there will be a ballot or a survey, but believe this should be done after a decision is made as to whether Ryedale members support the proposal at Council tonight to go forward. In view of this response, and until further feedback is obtained from Ryedale Unison members, I would like to advise you that the interim response from the Ryedale branch is in line with our sister branch in Harrogate and supports the East-West proposal put forward by KPMG." So that there, I think, is very useful to us in understanding the views of our staff. And as I have stated, we don't take our orders from staff, but we do owe it to them to take on board their views and to represent them. And imagine if we could vote unanimously this evening, standing shoulder to shoulder with them, officers and members together, strengthen unity as we enter this difficult transition period. I really very much doubt that's going to be possible, but that's the unanimous view so far from the staff. And I hope that we can at least reflect on that view in our deliberations and our discussions this evening, because at the end of the day, it's their livelihoods that we're talking about here. They are our staff and they are our greatest asset.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Gilbert Moore?
No, thank you.
Councillor Goodrick, a question from Councillor Goodrick.
Sorry, Chairman, I wasn't aware I had my hand up.
No, that's fine. We'll go straight on to Councillor Frank.
Thank you, Chairman. Kane, I wanted to ask you at the start of this process, I was given to understand that we needed to have the agreement of the other councils, of the other 7 councils, to put our proposal forward, and that would strengthen the bid if we had the agreement of other councils. Is that so? Is that the case?
Thank you, Councillor Frank, for your question, which again I think is an important one. What I would say is that, to answer it very simply, we do not need agreement from any other authorities prior to submitting. Each authority has the right to respond and submit a proposal. That could be a proposal to affect the interests, the outlook, the existence of another authority without their consent. The 7 councils that have worked together on this document, the 7 leaders and chief execs that have worked on this, has been the district and the boroughs. 3 of those districts and boroughs, I think actually I've had notification now, it's 4. Selby, Harrogate, Craven and Scarborough have all voted so far to submit. So this document, regardless of what we think of it, and regardless whether we like it or not, is going to be on the government's minister's desk. So tonight, this evening, is not about whether it goes forward, because we can't stop it. 4 councils have voted democratically and overwhelmingly to submit. What we can do is we can either be part of the process or we choose not to be part of the process from this way forward. And I do feel it will be a grave mistake if we were to decide, after being part of it up till now, we're now going to walk away and play no further role. And you are right to say that it will strengthen the case if it is submitted by 7, because it shows that 7 of the district and the borough councils actually want to shape the process going forward from here. So on both items, 1 council is enough to submit, East and West is going forward, but we should submit on the basis that we can then help shape that and build on the detail going forward to the final submission.
Have you a supplementary, Councillor Frank?
Yeah, I asked the question because If we're in East and West and York don't want to join and York don't want to be in East and West, and Hambleton have voted against submitting the East and West model up to the government, how does that leave us? Does that leave our bid? Does that weaken our bid? Does that weaken what we're trying to propose here? And I'm not saying don't send it in. I agree with you that we must send this document in, even though I think it's a poor document. But how does Hambleton voting against sending this East-West model in, and York not wanting to join anyway? How does that weaken our argument?
Thank you, Councillor Frank, for your question. In essence, this proposal, if things go as I expect they're going to go, and is subject to what the decision this council makes this evening, we will have a proposal from KPMG, a case for change, that's been submitted by 6 councils. There are 9 authorities in York and North Yorkshire, so this would have overwhelming majority support for submission from each of the district and borough from across the whole patch of the 9 authorities. County Council have voted to submit theirs. However, what Hambleton District Council has not done is it has not, as I understand it, and I think their meeting was happening today, they have not voted to support another proposal. They haven't supported this one. They've said nothing, the equivalent of burying your head in the sand. And I think that's a great shame for Hambleton. What York have said is they haven't backed the East and the West, and they haven't backed the county proposal for submission. What they've said is everyone else can do what they want, but City of York must stay as it is. That is not a sustainable position. It's fine for them to express that view, but it doesn't mean that they can block this or stop this or veto this. Ultimately, the government minister, the Secretary of State, will choose an outcome and decide which way to go forward, which could mean contravening the wishes of a local authority. I think it's also worth reminding members that the government minister wrote to all authorities in York and North Yorkshire, not just the county council and the district and the boroughs that are currently 2-tier, but the City of York, which is an existing unitary authority. So their intention, I believe, is that York is too small. It's clearly smaller than the lower limit. The county proposal, 620, is larger than the upper limit. The East and West that's been put forward is the only proposal that actually complies with the limits on the population criteria put forward by government. I think it meets the government criteria, and I think hopefully it'll be looked upon favourably by the government minister. But in summary, a local authority cannot veto the change. The decision will be made by the Secretary of State, and it then becomes incumbent on all authorities to play a full, active and cooperative role in moving to whatever the new arrangements are decided.
Thank you. I now have Councillor Mason, followed by Councillors Oxley and Delaney. If you do have a question, please put your hand up electronically. And when you've asked your question, if you'd lower your hand. Councillor Mason.
Cheers, Chair. Kane, could you circulate that communication between you and Luke Hall, the list of emails that you did? I think that'd be useful for all members to see what has been going backwards and forwards with you, if that's all right. A couple of things. Really, it goes back to what Jim was saying about the money, the funding that comes with the Devo deal. And as far as I understand it, and this was from communications that I'd had in September, some of the financial asks could have been pulled out of the Devo deal and asked for anyway regarding COVID recovery, net zero, and submitted into the spending review. Mid-September, as far as I understand it, Ryedale Council and Hambleton were the 2 councils that were blocking this at the moment. I just wondered, did it actually happen? Did we support those asks in the end, or did we end up not getting any of the asks submitted because it needed to be unanimous of all councils?
Thank you, Councillor Mason, for your question, which again I think is an important one. What I'd first like to say regarding the letter from Luke Hall, that has been circulated already and has gone to all members. The letters that have been sent have also been circulated, but I am happy to circulate them again. And the communication that we've had from the government, which I think is unequivocal and makes very clear the government's intentions. In terms of the devolution asks and the potential price pot that we're talking about, and we are talking about a significant amount of money over the next 30 years, around £2 billion. we as Ryedale District Council have not yet voted on whether to submit that asks document. That will come on December the 3rd. What is important to recognise, however, is that the County Council proposal that's gone forward is not just a unitary proposal, it's also a proposal for a mayoral combined authority, i.e. a devolution deal. It's also a request to postpone the County Council elections. So it does multiple things in one, and is proposing a devolution deal as well as a strategic partnership with City of York Council. Turning to the issue at hand, though, in terms of the vote, we have not yet voted. We will vote on December the 3rd. My view has always been that until we have a democratic decision by this council to sign up to the ask document, then none of the other 7 which have voted positively should move forward. Because as things stand at the moment in legislation, an individual authority can veto being part of a combined authority area. And I do sense that you've had some conversations with representatives from the York and North Yorkshire LEP, who do have a very clear view on this issue. And their view was that we shouldn't really look at democratic decisions that council have made. We should just go ahead and stick it in. We were told that we'd try to meet the autumn statement, and you mentioned there the spending review. Ultimately, the autumn statement was cancelled and never actually happened. So there has been no real opportunity where those asks could have been considered by government. Clearly, there's so many pressures at the moment on the Treasury that it will be unlikely in any case that would have moved forward before now. So I think we made the right decision in that we get the unitary debate sorted. We decide what we're going to do as an authority. We hand it over to the government to make a call. And then we pick up the issue of a combined authority, which can happen irrespective of whether I believe, irrespective of whether we move forward to a unitary arrangement. The government minister indicated to us verbally that we would have to move to a unitary arrangement in order to unlock a devolution deal. However, there is a mayoral combined authority that exists already, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, which does include a mixture of a unitary authority and a 2-tier area. So clearly it is possible for that to happen, for us to get a unitary deal without moving towards unitary arrangements. However, perhaps the government is changing track, and that is likely to be expressed, I believe, in the white paper, which we've still not yet seen sight of. So hopefully, Councillor Mason, that does answer your question. We've not yet voted on the ask, but we will do so on December the 3rd.
Have you a supplementary, Councillor Mason?
Yeah, it didn't quite answer my question. The question was, had we identified the ask that could have been taken out of the Devo deal and put into the ask for the spending review? Now, it's irrelevant whether the spending review was cancelled or not. Now, yes, hindsight, it's a great thing. But I just wanted to make sure that we understood that we could have asked for some of this money now that wasn't part of the spending, part of the devolution deal, and why Ryedale and Hamilton were blocking this when it needed to be unanimous. The deadline was the 24th of September. And we could have submitted a significant request for funding. That was the question. It wasn't.
Yeah, the question.
And everything else. But,
yeah, the question, Councillor Mason, is this item has been scheduled for us to discuss on December the 3rd, and clearly we didn't have meetings for a significantly long period of time. We were straight back in with a full council meeting. We then went into our annual meeting. We're now here, 2 extraordinary meetings this week. The next scheduled meeting of full council is December the 3rd. So to go through our protocols and our procedures, we had to go to policy and resources, which I think is the right thing to do to give it committee scrutiny, then to go to full council. And the only way we could have done that is to hit the date on December the 3rd. And I don't take my orders from York and North Yorkshire LEP. I don't take my orders from the unelected chairman of the LEP. We have to make democratic decisions for us as a council. And if our timeline doesn't quite accord with theirs, then that's just a shame. But I wasn't going to allow a submission against when we'd had no democratic decision, because I would have been hauled over hot coals, and the chief executive would too, by this council. And as you pointed out, the view was, let's get something into the Treasury for the autumn statement. The autumn statement never happened. So there's been no missed opportunities here. And we knew the autumn statement wasn't going to happen, but others seemed determined that it was going to be and convinced that it was. So we haven't really missed an opportunity. And I think one thing that is worth just specifying is Hambleton District Council have refused to schedule a date to consider the devolution asks. What we've said is we are going to consider it, we just haven't yet been able to do so because of timing as our meetings. I mean, it's December the 3rd. So I think that's an important difference between Hambleton and ourselves.
I have Councillor Loxley now for a question. Councillor Loxley.
Can you hear me, Chair?
I can now, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Duncan, preface to the question, I'd like a one-word answer at the end, either yes or no. I know it's a strange thing to ask a politician, but let me just try it. Like everybody else, I think, listening, the timeline is wrong, accept that. However, we are where we are. Can you please confirm, absolutely, so that there's no misunderstanding, this proposal is going to go forward because other people are going to put it forward. We have been part of putting this together, and the only way that we can stay involved in the further development of this between the 9th of November and the 8th of December, something that we have already invested time, effort and money in, that the staff unions at Ryedale House seems to think is a pretty good idea. The only way we can stay involved in that as it develops is to vote for submission tonight. Is that the case, please?
Yes.
A supplementary, Councillor Oxley.
I don't think, with an answer like that, I don't need one, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Delaney.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Duncan, we've heard a lot from each side on this debate about the level of support each proposal has. They've had backing from elected members, public figures. I think even the CEO of Durham Council has given his opinion on what he thinks about the proposals. However, we've heard very little about what the public actually think, and surely that's very important. Do we have any information about what the public think and which option they prefer? And if not, do we intend to find this out? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Delaney, for your question. I think it is important to recognise that we're all here to serve the public and we have to understand what they think and what they want. And you are also right to point out that the County Council has done, to give it to them, a tremendous job of lobbying and getting support from, I would call, establishment figures. We've seen professors, we've seen the NHS, we've seen the Chief Constable of North Yorkshire Police, we've seen the Chief Fire Officer of the Fire Service, we've seen the Police and Crime Commissioner, Julia Mulligan, we've seen the Chief Executive of Durham County Council, an unelected official, it's worth pointing out, wading in and giving his view on what we should do. We've also seen involvement from Cornwall Council. And actually, what's really important is that we decide, as the people of York and North Yorkshire, what the best thing is for us to do, because we live here, we understand the area, we know the area. We don't need to be told by a handful of people who think that they know what's best for us and have waded into this debate, which I think has been the wrong thing for them to do. I think it's not been the right thing for them to get involved in such a political issue. And this is a political issue, and it's worth remembering that. In terms of the issue of gauging public support, again, I think this is really important. And what I can do, and I've not had the ability to share with members yet, is share details of market research, which has been commissioned, independent market research, to poll the views of the people of York and North Yorkshire to gauge their opinion. And they were asked a very simple question, which is, out of the two options, which did they prefer? And they had a statistically significant sample size, and the view overwhelmingly was in favour of the East and West proposal. 66 for East and West, 34 for North Yorkshire and York. It's worth also pointing out that they did a analysis of the results for people who are residents of Ryedale. The support was actually higher in Ryedale, 74 to 26 in favour of the East and West proposal, as opposed to the York and North Yorkshire proposal. It's worth pointing out that that was replicated across all of the districts, with the City of York results being fractionally 54-46 in favour of the North Yorkshire and York option. Worth, however, also pointing out that in York, in terms of rating 1 to 10 of the two options, the balanced option of East and West actually received a higher rating also from the residents of the City of York. This is market research. It's not a conclusive all-encompassing referendum, but it does give, I believe, a good indication that actually there is support amongst the public for the East and West proposal. People recognise its benefits. And I think that is something really powerful which we can draw on as we move towards the final piece of work for submission by December the 9th.
I'm sorry, Chair. I didn't hear I heard the 6634, but I didn't hear the York figures. I had a lot of feedback at that point. Would it be possible to hear the York figures again, please?
Councillor Duncan, could you repeat that?
So yeah, I'm happy to do that. The York figure was 54-46 in favour of the North Yorkshire and York option. However, when asked to rate out of 10 the two options, the balanced option, the East and the West, was 6.2 and was rated higher than the North Yorkshire and York option.
Thank you.
Again, I'm happy to share this information with members so you can look at it and digest it. It's literally hot off the press. I received it shortly before the meeting.
Councillor Delaney, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I've got a number of people with their hands either still up or indicating they wish to ask another question. I'm going to offer ask the floor. If anybody's not yet answered a question, if they'd speak up pretty sharpish, I will take two other questions from members who have indicated they wish to ask another question. In fact, there's three. There's Councillor Paul Andrews, Councillor Mason, and Councillor Rain. Is that right? No? Councillor Mason, if you'd put your hand down then, please. Councillor Paul Andrews, are you still wanting to ask another question? No?
Yes, Chairman. Yes,
right.
Chairman.
One question only.
Yeah, it's quite simple, Chair. Why is it, Keane, that when asked to not to go ahead at this time with reorganisation proposals, the government made an exception in regard to North Yorkshire, Somerset, and the other place, and Cumbria? What was so special about those three counties that makes the government want to do it? Is it something to do with development that they would like to see? They would like to see take place here?
Thank you, Councillor Andrews, for your question. All I can draw on is a letter that we've received from Luke Hall, and I can read the relevant section out to you, although you have received it. It states, on 9th of October, the Secretary of State invited principal councils in Cumbria, North Yorkshire and Somerset, including associated existing unitary councils, to submit proposals for moving to unitary local government in those areas. As a subsequent parliamentary statement on the 12th of October explained, councils in these areas have requested such invitations and have been developing ideas about restructuring local government in their area for some time. In some cases, work is fairly advanced. I'm aware of the additional pressures councils are facing in responding to COVID-19. However, it is right that they should now have the opportunity to take their local discussions to a conclusion and, if they wish, make proposals for unitary reform. So on that basis, the only thing I can draw on, Councillor Andrews, that we received from the government is that there has been a local request. That local request for North Yorkshire has not come from Ryedale District Council, nor has it come from the City of York Council or the other 6 districts and boroughs. That leads me to the conclusion that it's come from the only authority left by the process of elimination, which is North Yorkshire County Council, who tell us now that we have no choice but to proceed with this process. However, as the letter makes clear, if no proposals are submitted, then no proposal can be enacted. Sadly, as we know, meetings have already taken place and the County Council has decided that it is going to submit its proposal, thereby triggering the process and leaving us with a choice of what we do next, which is to submit something or to do nothing.
Thank you.
I've got Councillors Keel, Goodrick, and I have an initial CR with hands up. I'll ask those 3 questions and then we will go into debate. Councillor Keel.
I think Councillor Rain has also got a hand up, Mr. Chairman, but anyway, yeah, very quick question really, Keane. Could we please have those figures that you've just quoted? I'd be interested to know what the size of the sample was of that survey work. So yeah, if you can just forward that on to us, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
I'm very happy to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Goodrick.
Thank you, Chairman. I wondered if the Leader of Council would give me his view on the fact that Hambleton have decided not to support the bid for the West and York have decided very clearly not to support the bid for the East. Does he believe this will significantly weaken the bid going forward to government?
Thank you, Councillor Goodrick, for your question. I think I've addressed some of these issues already, only to say that City of York Council have resolved that they want to stay as they are. That's in essence their submission to government, is stay as they are. Hambleton, and I haven't seen the full details of their resolution, but my guess would be that there was no resolution that was reached, i.e. they want to stay as Hambleton, similar to City of York Council. Whether they actually said that or not, I'm not clear, because silence could be taken in two different ways. And I think it's a difficult conundrum as to how you interpret that. But what I would say is, again, and to reiterate, the government is going to make a decision. And in theory, only one council could submit a proposal and it could be enacted by the government, even if all other 8 were opposed to it. What we do have is 2 proposals that are going forward. The counties is going to be on the desk, the East and West is going to be on the Minister's desk, and it's going to be for him to decide. What there will be after this, whichever option is chosen, there will actually be a public consultation lasting up to 10 weeks. And at that point, there will be the opportunity for members of the public, for businesses, for unions, for other groups, community groups, to state their views and their preferences on the model that's been put forward. That will allow, I think, a fair understanding and a fair comparison of views of the members of the public. What I think is worth pointing out is that the City of York Council, without even looking at the options, decided that they wanted to stay as they are. They believe that they can't improve their services any further by changing from what they are at the moment. They believe that everything is fantastic and that they are the very best way of structuring things. And I think that's a great shame for the elected members of York and for the people of York not to have looked at the different options, the different possibilities that could have been put forward. It seems very close-minded, and I think it is a shame because there are weaknesses in the City of York. I think it's worth recognising that. And but what I would say is that out of the 9 authorities, there is only one proposal that I believe has majority support out of those 9, and that is this one. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen tonight with Ryedale's meeting, but as we now do know, this has been submitted by 4 of the district councils, 4 of the authorities in York and North Yorkshire.
I've got Councillors Rain and Raper, and then I will wind up the questions and we'll go into debate. Councillor Rain.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Duncan, I just wonder, the market research, like figures on this market research, because unfortunately I've had numerous people from Ryedale, particularly Malton, questioning this whole situation. And you've just mentioned just then about going to public consultation. Surely it should have been a bigger public consultation before all this, we've got this far. The amount of people that have actually said to me, they've only just heard about this. This is public. This is not councillors or anybody else. This is public. And they didn't know anything about it. If I hadn't have said anything, they wouldn't have known. So it's basically what figures and where was this market research? Because I haven't met one person that's actually talked to any market research people about this. So I'm just curious of the numbers in Ryedale, Malton, wherever, who's been talked to, how many? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rain, for your question, which again I think is an important one. What I would say is we have been up against an extremely difficult timeline here that's taken us all by surprise. We met with the Government Minister on the 7th of July, where he stated that we would be inviting proposals and move towards that at pace. We received a formal letter on the 9th of October, outlined submissions have to be in by the 9th of November, and then final submissions by December the 9th. Clearly, that has been an extremely tight and extremely difficult timeline for everybody, particularly when we have got the COVID-19 situation that's been ongoing. And as I pointed out already, I think we started off with no preconceived idea of what the outcome would be. The County Council decided from day one it wanted a county unitary. Before it even looked at any figures and looked at any options, it wanted a county unitary and a county unitary only. That clearly put them at an advantage to be able to engage with the public, which we have not quite had the luxury of being able to do. But what I would say is that we have tried our best. We've written to businesses, we've written to parish councils. I have a briefing with parish councils. I have received quite a lot of feedback so far on the county proposal and on the East and West proposal, which will inform the final submission. There's a website that's been established with information on it. There's been several bits of information in the local press, as well as some social media as well, to let people know what's happening. And the county council have phrased this in the way that there is one option and one option on the table, which is theirs. We've said there is that option, but there's also this other option that's been drawn up to try and allow people to understand what's going on. Clearly, we're not going to reach everybody. And clearly, the 30 of us as elected councillors, we also have to play a role in informing the public. And it sounds, Councillor Wren, that you have had some conversations with members of the public, informing them as to what's happening. We are up against it. And I think some people don't realise what's happening. I think they also think it's not going to happen. And clearly there's a lot going on in people's lives at the moment. So, yeah, we just need to keep going and trying to get the message out there.
Councillor Wren, have you got a supplementary?
Just basically, I would really like to know the figures, how many people have been consulted and how many businesses have been consulted, if that's possible.
I can get that information to you, Councillor Wren. I've
got Councillor Raper and then we'll go into debate. Councillor Raper.
Thank you, Chairman. Keane, I'll ask your opinion, please, similar to what you were asked by Councillor Oxley, yes or no, will suffice as a reply. The standing of Ryedale Council in the eyes of the public will be held detrimentally by them if we don't make a decision to go and put this forward to government collectively with our partner organisations in this area on this subject. Thank you.
I'll just say yes, Mr. Chairman. I'll say yes.
Thank you. I don't suppose there'll be a supplementary. Councillor Raper. Then we'll go into debate. Councillor Duncan, please move the recommendation, and once it is seconded, you may make your speech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the recommendations A and B.
Thank you. And is that seconded?
Certainly is, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Councillor Duncan, please make your mover's speech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have made some important decisions as a council, often very tough, often very controversial. But while tonight's decision is the most important we will have taken in the 46-year history of Ryedale District Council, it perhaps isn't quite as tough and quite as controversial as it may seem. Indeed, I feel we have been pushed into a corner and have just one possible course of action. I know many would prefer reorganisation not to be happening now as we battle COVID-19, or indeed at any time, because they support the system that we've had in place for almost half a century. I am a proud member of this council, proud to lead it, proud of our staff and proud of our recent achievements against the odds. But the fact is that reorganisation is happening whether we like it or not. We face a vote this evening, not whether we want reorganisation, not whether we want the county council proposal, not whether we want the East-West proposal. It is not about which option we prefer, nor is it bizarrely about the actual contents of the proposals as they stand right now. It is about whether we want Ryedale District Council to have a say, to have a role, to influence the future of local government in our county after tonight's decision. To be clear, a vote against submission of the KPMG case for change this evening is not a vote against reorganisation, because reorganisation is happening. Our hand has been forced by the County Council, who have triggered this process and are ruthlessly pursuing their preferred option. The 7 district and borough leaders wrote 3 times, to the Prime Minister, to the Secretary of State, to the local government minister, asking for this process to be abandoned now, given the pressures of COVID-19. Not forever, but for now. After weeks of waiting, we finally received a response from the local government minister, and I can confirm that our request for a meeting has been refused, and the government's invitation for proposals still stands, despite the situation we are under. A highly disappointing response. A vote against submission this evening will not stop the County Council proposal, because it was submitted yesterday, 57 votes to 12. Both myself and my independent colleague, Councillor Burr, were amongst that 12. Both of us are of the view that at a time of national emergency, is not the right time to embark on this process. Sadly, we failed, and most councillors agreed that it was the right time and it was the right proposal. So their proposal will arrive on the Minister's desk on November the 9th, triggering the reorganisation process. So what about the alternative? A vote against submission this evening is also not a vote against the East and West proposal, because Scarborough Borough Council on Monday, Craven District Council on Tuesday, Harrogate Borough Council yesterday, and Selby District Council today have voted to submit that proposal. So if we are not voting on the principle of reorganisation, if we are not able to vote to stop reorganisation, if we are unable to stop the County Council proposal going forward, if we are unable to stop the East-West proposal going forward, and if the decision is ultimately one which we will not take, what can we do? The future of local government in North Yorkshire will not be decided here and now, that's clear. Indeed, it will not be decided by local councils at all. But we do have the chance to play a role in shaping the decision-making process and the conclusion that the Secretary of State ultimately reaches on our behalf. In effect, we have two options this evening. We vote against submission, the only result of which is to deny Ryedale District Council the right and opportunity to play a role in the next steps of the process. We leave it to the other districts to speak for us. How does that serve our residents in Ryedale? How does that fulfil the role we have all been elected to do? Or we vote in favour of submission, allowing us to take a seat at the table and thereby giving us, Ryedale District Council, and the residents we represent, the chance to play a role in shaping the future. I expect that many will instinctively like the East and West proposal. I expect many will instinctively not. Others will like neither of the proposals. But what I expect binds us all together, all councillors of all groups, myself included, is that we have questions we want answered and items we want to be addressed. The only way we can do that, the only way we can get those answers and resolve those issues, is if and only if we vote in favour of submission this evening and play a constructive role in the coming weeks and months. Not to do so would mean Ryedale withdrawing from discussions with other authorities, Ryedale's seat at the table left empty. It means us handing over thousands of pounds for an independent study for us never to submit it. It means pretending it is business as usual, a matter of months before the potential abolition of this authority. It means walking away when our residents and our staff deserve for us to walk forwards. So in summary, reorganisation is happening. The county proposal is on its way to government. So is the East and West proposal, and the Secretary of State will ultimately make a decision. Do we want to dig a hole, stick our head in it, and wake up in just a few months' time, full of regret that at a time when we could have done something, we chose to do nothing? Or do we want to play a role and shape the future of local government in Ryedale, whatever that might be? That's the only question being asked tonight, and that's the question
Councillor Duncan,
that we must answer.
Very good timing. Councillor Arnold, as seconder, do you wish to speak at this moment?
Not at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Janet. I heard you. Yes, Chairman, I do. The Secretary of State in his paragraph 2b said that there should be evidence of good deal of local support. I'm yet to find local support. I've asked hundreds and hundreds of people, and I've spent hours explaining to local people what is going on. And I think I've sort of won. I believe that North Yorkshire County Council is bullying districts into this devolution deal. I believe that the leaders of North Yorkshire Council, both elected and unelected, working to grab all the power of North Yorkshire.
I can't hear him, Chair.
I can just. Councillor Arnold, is there any way of speaking a little nearer to the microphone?
Sorry, Chair. I've lost it now. Oh, dear. I've lost my link now, Chair.
That's an awful lot better.
Well, I've lost my link, but as long as you can hear me, I don't mind.
We can speak up while we can.
I have many concerns, and we will never know how this is going to work until we support this proposal. So, yes, I will support it, and I hope we get a final copy of the next proposal before it's submitted. With regards to the mayor, I'm not sure about that, and this is going to create another two-tier authority, which I'm supposed to be trying to get rid of. But I think if we do not support this proposal, you'll be removing Ryedale District Council from the future discussions and removing any chance for a future for Ryedale District Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If anybody else wishes to speak for or against the motion, make yourself known quickly. Councillor Raper.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think we need to go and put this and send something to government to let them know that we're joining in the discussion and the debate. To not do that would be abdicating our duty as members of the council. We need to inform the public, in my opinion. The sooner we can do that, the better, and inform them of our position and also of what has happened and the timeline of what has taken place so far this year, from the first ministerial letter to us, just to let people come to grips like we have had to do, and to get the general public to formulate an opinion in their own minds, so that when something further comes forward, we can put something out to them and say, what do you think of this, if we can, and get feedback through a website if we can create one. I like to submit that we should do something like that, so we can take in feedback. If that can be accommodated, I'd be very, very much obliged. But we need to get this thing moved forward. Thank you.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairman. The fact is, we're not able to vote to stop this, as has already been said. We're purely voting tonight on whether we want a seat at the table. And I make no apologies for quoting a good friend of mine, because I think what I heard was so apt in this. We've bought the ticket, now let's go to the dance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Oxley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, like many others listening to this, I have spoken about this right the way through the summer at parish meetings, at parish council meetings. I'm sure we all have. We have been part of getting this message out. The feedback I have had is lots of people don't want anything to happen, but if they want one of these options or the other, it is the east-west rather than the alternative. But most importantly, and it's what Councillor Mackenzie just said, this is about staying involved and being part of this and helping to shape it. That's the decision tonight, and it's one that we should support and we should make.
Thank you. Councillor Keel is next. I also have Councillors Mason and Paul Andrews. Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, a lot's been said about the importance of having to make a decision on this issue tonight. And I think members should be reminded, as the leader's already said, that this isn't the full detail. There was a lot more that can be done in the next month to develop the detail in this proposal. But to not make a decision tonight would entirely play into the hands of the county council, who seem determined to foist a mega authority on us to the detriment of Ryedale, I believe. We should be thinking about our residents in making this decision. They are who we are elected to represent. And if we are swayed by the county council's master plan, we will do them a huge disservice, as Ryedale, as we know it, will be swallowed up into a giant council. And how will Ryedale's voices be heard if we allow this mega council to be implemented? And however hard local representatives try, they will struggle to make their voices heard. So yes, we would all like Ryedale to continue and to go with the status quo, but I believe that North Yorkshire County Council will not back down on this. They've invested a huge amount of money in their all singing, all dancing proposal, and they're pushing incredibly hard to get it through. We just can't stick our heads in the sand anymore and say we must save Ryedale. Rather than that, we have to go for the best option for Ryedale. And yes, there will be things that we don't agree with, and we would all like to see more detail in the east-west proposal. But if we choose not to back any proposal, we will be railroaded by the County Council and the government into the North Yorkshire County Council plan. And something that I hope we would all agree would not be the best option for Ryedale and for Ryedale people. So I really hope people will get behind this proposal this evening. Thank you.
Before going to Councillor Mason, is that Councillor Clark wanting to speak?
It is, Chair. I'll go after Councillor Mason. I just wanted you to know I wish to speak.
Thank you. I will add you to the list. I have Councillors Mason, Paul Andrews and yourself. Once members have spoken, if they'd lower their hand, please. Councillor Mason.
And just following on from Di, I echo all Di's comments, but I just wanted to add a little bit more about the detail that goes in to make sure we ensure that the detail on the democratic representation and the local representation at district level is in our bid. That would be important. And I'd also like to suggest that members that we support, obviously with the public consultation, but we take it back to the people of Ryedale to let them decide what the option is after the consultation, because at the end of the day, this is their lives that gets affected. So I hate to use the R word, but maybe we should be looking at having a referendum on what the devolution deal is and asking the members, asking the public.
Councillor Paul Andrews.
Can you hear me, Chair?
I can.
Yeah. Chair, after going through a lot of arguments with the County Council on highways with regard to change priorities at a level crossing at Norton, the crazy idea of having a superstore with a single access to Pasture Lane, the local plans, which I can remember, the county representative, the local plans being asked being asked by the inspector, is this plan robust? And she said, yes, it is. And the inspector accepted those words as though it was gospel. And then, of course, there was the delay on implementing the level crossing, the HGV restriction at the level crossing. I mean, I have no confidence in North Yorkshire County Council from a planning point of view. They may have some good departments in other respects. I'm a little confused, but on the other hand, I'm a little confused by the KPG documents I read. For example, I'm not sure that they really understand the area. On page 74, for example, their report, they refer to employees by key industries. Look at them: key industries, health, accommodation and food, retail, education, manufacturing. And I ask myself, where is farming in that list? Where is horse racing? Have they no idea of the area they're talking about? I have in front of me page 119, which is the financial assumptions and benchmarking that applies to the appendix. And I'm sure this applies also, incidentally, to the County Council's bid. It says a 4-step process has been applied to calculate the potential efficiencies that could be achieved through council reorganisation. At this stage in the process, a top-down approach has been undertaken. It is based on benchmarks of savings expected and achieved elsewhere. Where else is elsewhere? And so on the right-hand side of the page, it lists them. Sources considered include Somerset business case, June 2020, and a whole series of other ones, which, apart from Cornwall County Council, I don't think one of them has ever been implemented. I have been through many reorganisations, Chair, and I'm very cynical about the process. The smaller the council, the more control the elected councillors have over what goes on and what is spent. The bigger the council, when you have a council the size of North Yorkshire with its thousands of employees and only 20 councillors on a executive committee, there's absolutely no way that those 20 councillors can exercise adequate control over the uncontrolled growth of the bureaucracy in that organisation, and this applies to all big councils. If the East West proposal goes forward, the same will happen. It will be a big council. The number of members will not be sufficient to be able to control the expense, The money will come in from the rates and precepts, so there's no question of the efficiency of the organisation being controlled by profits. I'm extremely unhappy about this process. I certainly would, if I have to make a choice between East West and County Council, I prefer the East West proposal, because I think that the eastern districts are on the A64 corridor, and they do have something in common, whereas perhaps the other side do not. But I don't know how I'm going to vote.
2 minutes, Councillor Andrews.
I don't know how I'm going to vote, Chairman, but I'm not at all happy with the process. I think the document as has been prepared, like many consultants' documents of this kind, are badly flawed. But on the other hand, I may feel I have to support it just in order to prevent us being, if you like, forced into the North Yorkshire option. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Our amendment that I wish to move is the first of three. But I'm just moving one at this point, or you think fit to take the next two whenever. The amendment is alter A as follows. A(1), RDC requests the Minister to include local delivery units, LDU, on the district and borough boundaries so as to deliver our aim of, and then I open inverted commas, local services for local people delivered by local councillors, close inverted commas. And then 2 is a drafting amendment of what is already there. Approve the submission of the outline of case for change as amended above to the MCH, etc. In other words, little 2 is just as amended above, i.e. the one amendment that we put in. Would you like that emailed to you?
If you would email it to me, I have actually asked the clerk if she's able to take it down. I don't know if we've actually got
Would you prefer an email, because it can be emailed to you.
If you could email that to Ellen Walker, I'll just double check that she's able to take that. I am getting a response.
Can we hear from the monitoring officer, please, Michael? Can we hear from the monitoring officer on this amendment?
Yes, if Mr. Kitson is able to chip in at this moment.
Who asked for that, Chair? I didn't hear.
Councillor Duncan asked for that.
Okay, Chair. Sorry. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can, David. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. As I understood it, that was there was the A(1) was to add some commentary to the proposal, which was to request that the Minister include local delivery units on the district and borough boundaries. But then the second part, am I correct in thinking that that was asking to amend the proposal so that it included...
No, the second part would be A(2) to approve the submission of the outline as it reads now, outline case for change, as amended above.
So it would be an amendment. So it would be an amendment to the proposal that's been put forward. Okay. So on that basis, Chair, I mean, my advice on that would be that it's in effect introducing a new proposal, albeit slightly amended proposal, and it probably wouldn't be accepted. In effect, negates the proposed motion because it's putting forward something different from what KPMG have gone off and researched and provided an evidence base for.
Councillor Clark, that's the advice that we are being given.
I've got that. Can I respond to it? Can I respond to it, please?
You can.
Councillor Andrews referred in I think his initial question to the appendix 4, I think it was, that refers to local delivery units.
Mm-hmm.
Local delivery units, in there it says, would need a change of legislation. But local delivery units have been done by mega councils for years. They are perfectly doable. North Yorkshire had local delivery units to the extent that it had area subcommittees that were recommending or deciding at local level into the larger council.
Chair, I would suggest that that's going into the finer details of how things will be implemented in the future. I know.
I understand
Councillor
that.
Clark, if you'd listen to the advice, please.
So I would suggest that perhaps those proposals, if you like, or suggestions might be put forward as part of a more detailed consideration of what might go forward in December. Or, as I say, I mean, ultimately, if there's, well, you've referred there to area committees, if you like, or committees of that type, which would be set up potentially under the governance structure of whatever the new, or if there is indeed a new authority. So that would be a matter for that authority to determine how it wants to set up its governance and how it wants to deliver the services and functions. So for me, Chair, it would be going into the finer detail of how once a decision has been made about
it may be finer detail to you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that planning, local licensing, the local plan, community services are detail in any stretch of the imagination to the people of Ryedale. And what we are trying to achieve by this is say, we are supporting the KPMG bid, but the bid that KPMG rejected, we are asking for it to be considered by the Minister in the Minister's initial look at it. And all those who said they would like to keep Ryedale as it is, I think we're right. The leader is right that we can't. But this is saying that we do not want to be governed if you are in the wilds of Scarborough or Ryedale up into the moors from York. It is saying we want the decisions to be made within the current boundaries on local issues to be decided, and I'll quote it, local services for local people delivered by local councillors. That is not in any way negating the KPMG report. It is referring the Minister to a part that the KPMG report wrongly says can't be done.
Councillor Clark, I'm going to follow the advice given and that we will not debate the amendment. What you are suggesting, if the motion is passed and this report goes forward, we have time to add to it and work on the finer details, and what you are suggesting can therefore be added. I'll come back to you during the debate, should you wish to have another amendment, which we can take a view on, but this amendment will not be debated. I'm looking at the screen now.
Chair, just a minute. I'm not accepting that advice.
Well, I'm afraid it's not up to you to accept it.
Where does it in any way say at all that we cannot amend? This is Ryedale Council. We are speaking on behalf of the people of Ryedale. And
we're not taking your amendment. I am not taking your amendment, but I will come back to you if you have further amendments, which we can take a view on.
I have not been given, Chair, a satisfactory reason as to why an amendment to the KPMG submission cannot be put in.
We are not amending this report. It's not our report to amend. It is KPMG's report to accept or not.
Chair, would you like me to come in?
Yes, please, Mr. Kitson.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Clark himself has said that that matter around local delivery units has been dismissed by KPMG as part of the report. So to change that is to go against what's been presented by KPMG, and that is a fundamental change to the proposal, and therefore it negates the motion because it's proposing something fundamentally different. I appreciate that.
With respect,
Councillor Clark, your amendment is dead.
It steers the minister to look at one. It steers the minister to look at one point, Chair.
Any further? Other members, if you wish to speak to the motion,
Chair,
please.
I wish to take it to a vote as to whether people want to have that sent to the minister or not.
They can vote on the substantive motion. I am taking the advice given by our approved legal advisor. We're not taking the amendment.
On that advice, Chair, we can't vote against it tonight because that is negating the KPMG.
Chair, the motion as it stands is
on voting no. That's the substantive motion, yes or no. Members, if you wish to speak to the substantive motion, please raise your hand.
I didn't hear the question, Chair.
I'm asking the floor, other members, if they're wishing to speak. I can't see anybody else wishing to speak.
Chair, the advice. Chair, I totally disagree with the advice, and I am a lawyer, and I've been in local government, and I've presided over council meetings.
That's your privilege to say that, but as chairman, I'm going to not. If this motion is successful, and the report is accepted and submitted, it can be amended in due course by the deadline if anybody has polishing or tweaks or whatever you'd like to say to add to it. But this amendment will not go forward.
Chair, where does it say? Where does it say we can't amend it?
The advice given is that to try and change the report. It's not our report to
I'm
change.
not changing the report, Chair. I'm adding to the report, and this council is perfectly. When you pay for legal advice, when you pay for any sort of advice, you can take it, amend it, approve it, ignore it. You don't have to take the whole of it.
I am taking the advice given.
Prerogative
I've got Councillor Thackeray and Councillor Mason wishing to speak. Councillor Thackeray.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to reiterate what Councillor Clark has said and Councillor Andrews. The mere fact that this council commissions a report from any Tom, Dick or Harry in the universe, it's entirely up to us as elected members to say what we think and amend what the hell we like. Thank you.
Councillor Mason, you've already spoken. Is anybody else wishing to speak to the debate?
Mine's more of a question, really.
Well, it's not a question time, Councillor Mason. We are now. Councillor Frank, I have your hand raised. Councillor Frank.
So, are we saying then that this report can be amended, but not at this time, that it can be amended to go forward in its full entirety on the 9th of December? Are we saying that we can put that amendment in for local services, for local delivery for local people at a later time, between now and the 9th of December? And will the minister then look at that with the amendment, or will he already have looked at the KPMG report and not take it into account? What are we saying here?
I think that is, but Councillor Duncan will be able to reply to that in his reply to the debate.
Chair, how can he reply to a discussion on an amendment that so far I have seen and haven't heard, and no offence, David, by this, I have heard no legal reason as to why we cannot amend it. I understand the politics of it, I understand the logic behind it, but I don't understand at all why we can't do it. We are the elected representatives for Ryedale, not all the boroughs and districts, etc. And if you can have a range between voting for it or voting against it, then what is matter with a minor amendment of principle as an amendment to the document? And where does it say in legislation you can't do that?
Councillor Clark, I've given you my decision on the advice
I
given.
understand your decision, Chair. I'm asking for the legal reason from the monitoring officer as to where it says in the law you cannot amend this. It says in our constitution you can amend something.
Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion?
Chair, can I just clarify
Mr.
that
Kitson.
for Councillor Clark? Thank you. So if you look at the procedure rules in the Constitution, you're absolutely right. It does permit amendments to be made. If you look at Rule 13.6 is the rule that covers off amendments. But what that rule says is that an amendment cannot negate the motion.
I agree
what
with
I'm saying to you, yes. So that's where it provides for for that specific thing. It can't negate the motion. What we've got is, what I'm saying at this moment in time is you have a motion before you at an extraordinary meeting, and changing that motion to incorporate different things into what's being put forward is a fundamental change to that KPMG proposal and report, so that it makes it something different. So that in essence negates the motion.
With respect, the amendment does not say amend the KPMG report. Request the Minister to include local delivery units on district and borough boundaries so as to deliver our aim of local services for local people delivered by local councils. That does not negate the report.
No, but the
Councillor
second
Clark,
part of what
we'll
you
have
proposed
to agree to differ on this. This is the advice being given,
Can
and I am taking this advice.
I have in writing the legal reasons as to why we cannot amend it?
You will get that in due course. I'm looking at the screen. I can't see anybody else wishing to speak. Raise your hand now or forever hold your peace before we go to the proposer for his response. Councillor Duncan, therefore, closing remarks and reply to the debate.
We haven't got to closing remarks. I've got two further amendments, Chair. I told you I had three.
Well, Councillor Clark, I did give you a chance. Can you now say your second amendment?
I can, Chair, willingly, yes.
And if you do it slowly, because we're having to write it down longhand.
Well, did you not get the email earlier?
I'm not answering any emails at the moment.
I didn't. It wasn't sent to you. I hope it was sent to Democratic Services.
I think I'm hoping that they are getting them. But if you write them down so that we can move into the debate.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, speak slowly so I can write them down.
Yes, quite. Wish to amend, delete B(1), because it's the simplest way of amending it.
Sorry, where are we now on the recommendation?
Yep.
We're on 2.1 A and B. Where are we referring to, Councillor Clark?
We're referring up to B, Chair.
To B.
It now reads, the Chief Executive to consult simultaneously with all group leaders before finalising the case for change.
Should be all councillors, I say.
Well, I'll just wait for our advisor to give us a nod on that.
Mr. Chairman, I don't wish to interrupt, but there might be something I could say that might be useful.
Let's wait for the legal advice.
I think we'll do that because I can. We'll wait for the advice and then I'll come to you, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you.
Chair, so as I understand it, that amendment would be to that second part of the motion that's before the meeting, so that it will be a requirement for the Chief Executive to consult with all group leaders prior to submitting the final, submission to central government. Is that correct?
Yeah. Simultaneously.
Simultaneously, yeah. That should be fine to be proposed and considered by members as an amendment.
I will allow Councillor Duncan to come back on this at this moment, if it helps the debate.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, that I think I've made very clear that the Chief Executive, and I'm sure she understands this, needs to consult with all members of the Council, not just group leaders, but all members of the Council between now and the submission date on the 9th of December. I don't feel that we need an amendment. Councillor Clark may wish to continue, and as the legal advisor said, it's valid for him to do so. But in the interests of moving forward with this, I stated very clearly we need to have an all-member discussion, several perhaps all-member discussions. And I'm not sure that we need actually an amendment to do this, because the Chief Executive would not be very wise if she moved forward to submit something which members of the Council were not happy with. She understands that. She understands her role, and I think she can be trusted to do that role without us having to put forward an amendment. But if Councillor Clark wishes to continue, that's fine. But there is a commitment from me that all members will be consulted in the run-up to the final submission on the 9th of December.
Thank you for that. I think for the sake of transparency, I will we will debate, hopefully briefly, and then vote on the amendment. Councillor Clark, is your amendment seconded?
I hope so. I hope Councillor Potter should be seconding it.
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, it's down to you as proposer the motion or the amendment to speak to it. It makes perfect sense to me, but you do have the floor to speak to your amendment if you wish.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've seen clearly from above, from the rejection of the amendment to the KPMG thing, the danger of the KPMG report being amended by the Chief Executive with whatever consultation with individual members, because that could just be briefings. That will not necessarily be all. And I will take on, and I'm sure other group leaders would take on, the fact to cover Tracy Middleton on the basis that she, I believe, is the only ungrouped member of council. So it's supposed to consult. I would, and I hope others would, consult with her as immediately after and before the Chief Executive consulted with us. And it is vital that the full submission comes from Ryedale. We've just slung out a message coming from Ryedale that we want local. It depends whether the leader wants us to support his bid or not. Because if we are forced into the group leaders, the council leaders and chief executives have decided that, and we're all putting in the same again, we may as well be in the mega council that he's so frightened of now. And if we can't put in that local services need to be delivered for local people, delivered by local councillors, and the system stops us doing that, why are we as councillors? If we're doing, and Councillor Duncan is wanting to work with others, etc., and I'm highly delighted, and that's why I put the simultaneously in there, so that we can all work together to put in Ryedale's view of the KPMG document, not a combined across North Yorkshire mega view, but a view that's coming from the 30 councillors of Ryedale. And on that basis, I think all votes will be named, but can we have a named vote on this, please?
They will be in any event. Councillor Potter, as seconder of the amendment, do you wish to speak?
Yes, I think I will. Thank you, Chair. I'm just minded of the Conservative government rejecting putting environmental law and food standards into law and saying, oh, yes, they'd carry on. So I'm not too sure that I trust that entirely. Anyway. Yeah, North Yorkshire voted 57 to 12, didn't they, to move their bid forward last night? But is this the right time to be doing that in the midst of a major pandemic? I'm sure we all think not. Is it beyond the realms of fantasy that North Yorkshire, City of York and the district and borough councils could have all got together and decided not to submit a bid at this time, as it's completely inappropriate? Apparently not. I wonder why. Well, between the 30 Ryedale members present this evening, we represent the whole of the electorate, and therefore we should be making the decisions, not just the leader, including the final decision on any proposals, including localism. The leader of council has insisted on numerous occasions that he represents the views of all members. Therefore, why would he not want the leaders of all groups to make that final decision? And certainly not allowing the chief executive alone to make that final decision. Although, yes, I'm sure she wouldn't be silly enough to do so, but let's have this in writing. When all said and done, there's absolutely no detail in this outline proposal, and it's the detail that really counts. So, do you all want local democracy for local people, decided by their democratically elected local councillors at the end of this process, or not? So, to put it another way, on a decision affecting the future success or failure of a very significant local business, should the whole of the board of directors be making that decision, or should we leave it to the general manager in conversation only with the chairman of the board? Anyway, is this a decision that should be made for the benefit of all the people in Ryedale and what's best for them? Is it a decision that should be made for local democratic reasons or for purely party political reasons? And I'll leave those questions with you, and I hope you'll think that this is worth supporting. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillors Goodrick, Oxley, Mason and Paul Andrews to speak. Councillor Goodrick.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm inordinately confused by all of this, so I wondered if I could just ask for some clarity. My understanding was that tonight we were going to be voting that the bid went forward, not that we were altering the bid. Perhaps I could have some clarity on this, please.
I think it's merely, I think the monitoring officer will correct me, it's merely tweaking the second part of the recommendation, adding in the who is being consulted in that, finalising the case. Am I right in suggesting that, Mr. Kitson?
Yes, Chair. It's not amending the bid as such. It's part A of the recommendation that deals with the bid part. Part B deals with subsequent actions of the council in terms of approving the final submission, which is something in addition to what's been put forward or proposed to be put forward this evening. So yes, that's fine. It's a procedural matter if you want to describe it in that way.
Councillor Goodrick, is that satisfactory?
Sorry, Chairman, just for clarity. So the second amendment is to do with the second part of the recommendation, and the first part that wasn't supported was to do with the first part. Please tell me if I'm misunderstanding.
I think that's right. It's there is only one amendment. The first amendment that was proposed and was not allowed was a more substantive item.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Oxley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm puzzled. I don't see the need for an amendment. I've just heard the leader of the council say that there's going to be a process put in place if this goes through, between the 8th of November and the 9th of December, where all members will get the chance to have an input and be part of the discussion and part of what goes forward in the end. That's 30 of us. Why would I want to vote for an amendment that restricts it down to group leaders to have those conversations? We've already been offered something better than that.
Councillor Mason.
I'm not sure we have, William, to be honest. I'm a little disappointed with this amendment, actually. I don't see where we are actually voting for the amended document on this. I get that we're going to get consulted, Keane, and I appreciate that, and then Stacey will consult and we can all feed in. But we don't get to actually decide on the final document. And, I'm disappointed that this amendment actually is not asking for us to come back and vote on the actual final document myself. But
Wait for it.
Pardon?
Wait for it. Sorry.
One at a time, please.
Well, so at the moment, I'm kind of supportive of this amendment, but it's a bit disappointing. But I do think we need to be able to look at the final document and decide that that's the document we want to submit. And I can't understand why we're going to submit a document unamended, then amend it, and then just say yay. I think we need to look at it properly. It's the details. Mike says it's the details, and Mike made the point about why would the chief exec and the directors just look at it? Well, to be brutally honest, I think the whole board needs to look at it, and that's all of us.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Paul Andrews and Councillor Burr to speak. Councillor Paul Andrews.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say, Chair, that I'm pretty well disappointed because I suspect that what will happen is if this amendment is passed, which I shall support, is that you will then get the leader will then get the group leaders together and they will say, or one of them will say, well, how about looking at the local delivery option? And immediately will say, well, that's already been dismissed. We've already decided to go ahead on the east-west option, which has been submitted by KPMG. That is the decision in principle. Therefore, we cannot change from that. We can only look at the detailed working out of that option. I'm sure this is the intention, Chair. And I am very, very disappointed at your ruling. I am very disappointed at the monitoring officer's advice. You have tantamount prevented members from having a proper discussion on that document, and I think it's absolutely appalling. I'm terribly sorry to say this, but I really do. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Burr.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the bid that we're discussing tonight probably has got many flaws, and I think we all recognise that. But I think what this amendment is trying to do is actually trying to strengthen the bid. And I believe that all 30 members of Ryedale, their input is absolutely critical. And the report has been written with some consultation, but I feel in the majority of isolation. And I think that we all need to be involved. And I think that is what this amendment is actually trying to do. It's critical that all our councillors' views, and I do mean every councillor, their views should be listened to and go into strengthening the report. Representation for our residents is the most important thing. At the end of the day, that's why we are here. And it needs to be taken seriously in the bid. So, yes, I am going to support this amendment. All councillors, 30 councillors, have to be involved. Group leaders will, have meetings, will feed back. Everyone will really feel that they have had a part in this bid, and it's going to be for the many and not for the few.
Thank you, Councillor Steve Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. It concerns me that there are an awful lot of members not listening to the debate. This question came up right at the beginning because I was going to ask it. And it was answered the fact that everybody was going to be consulted. Every group leader was going to be consulted, and every member was going to be consulted by members' briefings and discussion. So I'm sorry, I cannot support this proposal.
I don't see anybody else wishing to speak to the amendment. Councillor Clark, would you like to reply to the debate for your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cleary, I did indicate, I don't know if it's come through or not,
Councillor Duncan, you will get the chance, as proposed with the substantive motion, to come back to the amendment after the proposal of the amendment.
That's fine, thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with Councillor Arnold. Everybody will be consulted by members' briefings. Brilliant, but it's not part of the decision making. The decision making as to what we do with this document over the next month is left in the hands of just the Chief Executive. And bluntly, it should be all members. However, Councillor Oxley's comment, we've already been offered something better. Now, I don't know his experience in life, but having 30 people sat in a room discussing how we put forward options on a document that we're going to approve or not approve is probably not best done by 30 people. And this is a proposal that 6 members look at it. 6 representative group leaders look at it. It's the mechanics of how we get to the whole board. Councillor Potter's comment. Councillor Mason requests that we need to look at the final document. I couldn't agree more. And if he just hangs on for a few seconds to the next amendment, he may see that happening. But answering Councillor Oxley's comment, I think all 30 of us sat round in a room several times between now and the end of November would not be the way to do it. But the final document that we put forward as a council should be completely amendable to put in what we members want. But the route to get to that document, to get towards that document, needs to be done by a smaller group of people. Yes, Councillor Andrews, I agree with you, and we've missed an opportunity to put in the localism bit, which I thought the Conservatives were in favour of, but the KPMG rejects it, and for that alone would be sufficient to vote against the KPMG route. A, they are legally wrong, B, they are technically wrong, and C, in terms of local people and local democracy, they are completely up the pole. Councillor Burr, you say all members are critical, all members need to be involved. This is the first step down the route to getting there, but group leaders, and I agree with you, group leaders is the first stage to get there as working with the Chief Executive to then move to the full council position later. So on that basis, I propose this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to address some of the points that have been raised. The first of all seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding of the KPMG piece of work. Yes, the primary focus is the East and the West as a result of an options appraisal. In effect, this is an options appraisal, looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the 10 different options that we could have opted for and gone down the line of. The fact that the local delivery units is in the appendix, that is very much an option in its own right, something very different than exists at the moment. What it is not talking about is having district and the current district boundaries as being, in effect, area committees. And what I was going to say before on Councillor Clark's first amendment was that I completely agree with him that we need some sort of forum committee that can make decisions on planning, licensing and other matters that affect the local area, perhaps local highways issues, and issues like that. So I completely agree with him, but it doesn't need an amendment. What it needs is for that to be fed into the piece of work that we're doing in terms of moving this forward. The second thing on the agenda from Councillor Clark in terms of his amendment is around now involving group leaders. We hear from some saying we need to involve all 30 Ryedale members, Councillor Burt and Councillor Potter. Then we're hearing Councillor Clark saying, actually, what we want to do is have the group leaders, a select number of councillors sat in the room. I have made a clear commitment on the record, this meeting has been recorded, that all members of this council will be involved and will be consulted in the piece of work that we do between now and submission on the 9th of December. I can't be any clearer than that. And I think it is actually disrespectful to the chief executive to think that she is going to go out there and agree things which are not in the parameters of what has been set by members. It's also worth pointing out that this piece of work that we've produced has been a partnership document. We've worked with 7 different district and borough councils, and that is going to continue, and that's going to have to continue to take place. It's chief execs and leaders in consultation with the other members on the council to be able to decide something ahead of the final submission. That's the only way that this is going to be able to work. And I think to actually siphon off a small select number of members is not going to fully represent the will of the council. So this amendment is not needed. And I think that it should be rejected on the basis that what we decide as Ryedale, we can put forward these things and we can suggest these things and we can push for these things. But ultimately, the East and the West proposal is the result of 6 now councils that are working forward from here. So it should be rejected. It should be rejected on the basis that if everyone wishes to be involved, then they can be and they should be. And that is what the chief executive will do.
I'm going to go to the
point of personal explanation.
Right.
In one sentence, I did not say that it was going to be limited to these members only. I said it was could be followed by a full council or I didn't exclude any of the members' briefings or anything else that's been proposed, but the decision making in my response to Councillor Oxley was that you couldn't have a working document looked at by 30 people in a room. You needed to cut it down before you put it to them for amendment and so on. I was misquoted, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the vote. Councillor Middleton, I do see your hand up, but we are going to close the vote. We've had the answers to the debate. Was there an observation rather than a debate?
Chair, I'm sorry.
Councillor Middleton, I didn't hear what you said.
I don't think I've been represented there by the amendment or by Councillor Duncan's reply.
Your observation, therefore, is noted, but we are going to go to the vote.
Again, I'm being misrepresented. Again, Chair, I'm being misrepresented. I said that Councillor Middleton, I was quite, and I suspect the other leaders would, but I certainly would be prepared to consult with her and talk to her as an ungroup member.
Your observation, and we're going to go to the vote now. The vote will be by roll. I'm just going to make a quick message to the officers to make sure they're ready to take the vote, and I will call alphabetically down the list. The vote is either for the amendment, against, or abstain.
Chair.
Right, we're ready. So, Councillor Joy Andrews, for or against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Paul Andrews?
For.
Councillor Steve Arnold?
Against.
Councillor Jim Bailey?
Against, Chair.
Councillor Braxton?
For.
Councillor Burr?
For.
Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Cleary, against. Councillor Cousins?
Against.
Councillor
Cousins? Hear that, Chair.
Against.
Against. Councillor Delaney?
Against.
Councillor Dockerer?
Against.
Councillor Duncan?
Against.
Councillor Frank?
For.
Councillor Garbett Moore?
Against.
Councillor Goodrick?
Against.
Councillor Graham? Councillor Graham?
Against.
Councillor Hope? Councillor Hope?
Chair, Councillor Hope's on my phone now. He's been cut out and he's just saying 4. If you listen carefully, you'll be able to hear him because it's a bit faint.
Councillor Hope?
Can you hear him?
No, we can't. I'll come back to Councillor Hope at the end of the vote, and if possible, he can make contact. We'll make contact at the end of the debate with the vote with the officers, please. Councillor Keel.
He's going to make 4.
Councillor Keel.
4.
Councillor King.
Against.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Against.
Councillor Mason.
For.
Councillor Middleton.
Against.
Councillor Oxley. Councillor Oxley.
Councillor Oxley, would you like to unmute yourself, please?
One second. Against.
Against. Thank you. Councillor Potter.
For.
Councillor Rain.
For.
Councillor Raper.
Against.
Councillor Ryby.
For.
Councillor Thackeray.
For.
Councillor Wass.
For.
Councillor Windrus.
Against.
Thank you. Have we any contact with Councillor Hope?
One of the officers ringing.
Councillor Middleton.
Can one of the officers ring Eric and get his vote, Councillor Cleary?
We're doing that now.
Thank you.
I'll wait for confirmation, but in fact, Councillor Hope, depending his vote one way or the other, doesn't affect the result. But I will just get confirmation from the officer that the numbers thus far are 16 against and 13 for. But I will get confirmation of that. If members could lower their hands, if possible, then it clears the decks, as it were. Councillor Oxley. I have confirmation of the figures thus far. It's 13 for, 16 against. The amendment is defeated. We will therefore move back to the substantive motion.
Councillor Cleary, can I confirm that Councillor Hope voted for?
So thank you. The numbers are in fact 14 for and 16 against. We'll move back to the substantive motion.
Councillor Cleary, Chairman.
Who's wishing to speak?
It's Councillor Andrews. Sorry, I'm still not on the.
Councillor Andrews.
Yes. I'd like to put an amendment in, please.
Right.
And it's amendment to 2.1 little b. Sorry, can you hear me?
Barely, yes.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
That's better.
So 2.1 little b, to authorise Chief Executive to finalise the case for change and present to full council on the 3rd of December for discussion before submitting the final proposal to the MHCLG to comply with the deadline for the 9th of December.
Can you just repeat that very slowly for the officer, for my benefit and the
Absolutely.
officers? Thank you.
To authorise the Chief Executive to finalise the case for change and to present the document to full council on the 3rd of December before submitting the final proposal, etc., etc.
Thank you. I'll just...
Chair, we can confirm we have that amendment.
Thank you very much for that. And is that seconded, Councillor Andrews?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Is
Councillor
that
Wass.
Councillor Wass?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Got that. Councillor Andrews, and if you'd, Councillor Joy Andrews, if you'd like to open your debate for your amendment.
Thank you. For those of the councillors that have been on PNR with me, they know I'm very fond of taking lots of things to full council, especially from policy and resources. But can you hear me? Sorry.
I can. Yes, far away.
Yeah. But as our leader said at the very beginning of this meeting, it's almost 5 decades. This is going to be a piece of history where one of the most important decisions for the people of Ryedale and Ryedale District Council as it is now. And I think we need to see the final submission. And my worry on just reading the recommendations was just it just says to authorise the chief executive to finalise the case for change and submit the final proposed to the MCLG. And I'm sure we will be briefed and we will have discussions. But I believe that this should be discussed at a council meeting where the public can sit in and listen, as I'm sure they're doing in the droves this evening, but that we can discuss and look at the final funds that we will all work towards. So I'm sure, as Councillor Duncan has said, we will all have input into this. But I think it needs to be seen transparently and democratically done. And so therefore, that's why I would hope I'd get support for this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Wass, as seconded, you wish to speak at this moment?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Just to say, really, a lot has been spoken about this evening, and I think really generally everybody has the sort of sense of feeling of where we're moving towards with this, but we need to be totally transparent with the way in which we actually put this together in the final document, even though we lost the First Amendment. A lot has been done by a lot of different people, but it's still not coherent, and it's still not really clear to certain members of the council, including myself, on certain issues where we're going totally with this, and it needs to be watertight if we are going to have the right seat at the right table at the end of the day with the other 6 councils that are proposing this. And I don't think it is disrespectful to the CEO of Ryedale, to back her as well, but to be there and to say, this is what we want to put forward as a council. We are answerable to the electorate, and it's up to us to make sure that is carried forward in the right manner. And I think there's certain things that we've done this evening that have been of the right manner, and we've got to go and do this together ultimately on the final stage of this. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillors Paul Andrews and Mason wishing to speak. Councillor Andrews, Councillor Paul Andrews.
Sorry, Chair. I had my hand up by accident.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
I think this is the right amendment to bring it back to us. As my only question would be why the 3rd and not the 7th, to give the officers more time and to give us more time to get the document right. We've got time. We haven't got a lot of time to play with, and the document needs to be made right. But I'm happy to back this amendment and actually have a look at the document properly before we submit it. I still think we should submit it, but I would like to see the final document first.
I've got Councillor Burr and Councillor Loxley. Councillor Burr.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think we've all tonight been discussing about localism and about us all wanting to be involved and wanting to get the best for the electorate. And the best for our wards. That's what we're here to do. We're elected, and that's what we want to do. And I think that if everybody pulls together and says that is truly what we all believe in, then I don't think you could fail to actually support this amendment. The bid has been, as I've said before, I feel written in isolation of some councillors, and I think that we want to really, really strengthen it. And if, as we've all said, it's not the right time and we don't think we should be doing it, but we feel as though we're being bullied into it by central government, then why not have an input and make it really, really strong and make us all feel that we've had an input? Then when we do go out to our electorate, we can honestly say to them, well, actually, we did, and we were allowed to have our points of view put on the table fairly and squarely. So I would like everyone to support this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Oxley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I have the same concerns that Councillor Mason's raised about the timing. This is a very, very short time scale to get stuff done. I would like to see this document being modified and worked on until the very last minute. And I'm not sure, I mean, on the 3rd of December or anything, if we go this way, all that can be presented is where we're at by then. I think there is lots of time for us all to have our input, and I pick up on what Councillor Burr said. We can have our input, we can have our involvement, we can have our say, we can't all get exactly what we want.
I don't see anybody else wishing to speak.
Yes, please, Chair.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's difficult when you're on the phone to see whether you're pushing in or not. I think this is a sensible amendment because the final decision should be made by members. But I agree with Councillor Mason and Councillor Oxley that the time is pushed, and maybe moving it on to, I think Councillor Mason suggested the 7th, because the full council on the 3rd would be useful. And if he were to, if this gets passed, then it could be amended. If he was to propose an amendment that we move it to the 7th, I would happily second that. But let's see if we've got the support for this first.
Have you finished, Councillor Clark?
Yes, I have, Chair, yes.
Councillor Keel.
Brief.
Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think we did get some assurance at the start of this meeting that this would happen, but I see no problem at all in putting it into writing in the recommendation. So I'm absolutely fine with that. I do have concerns about leaving it as late as the 7th, simply because if we have another lengthy meeting and a lot of debate like we have this evening and people want to change things, it gives the officers very little time to make those amendments to get the document in on time to the government. So that is a concern, but I certainly will be supporting the amendment. I think it adds to the recommendations rather than scuppers them. So thank you.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I think two things. I'd like to say that there's been talk that the final document may be amended or discussed or signed off at that meeting, and I think that's just not feasible, really, given the detail. I think it's absolutely right that councillors should give their priorities, that should make sure that the Chief Executive understands the important things indeed about local delivery, etc. But to try and write that by committee at the last meeting would be doomed to failure. The other thing I'd say is that it's not really just our document. The strength of this will be it being added together with the other district and borough bids, if not exactly the same. And so, having given our priorities, the Chief Executives will have some horse trading to do to make sure that they get a bid streamlined which hangs together. Otherwise, it would just be Ryedale's own idea on its own, which I think would be doomed to failure. So, for that reason, I don't really support this I do support having our say, but our say needs to be earlier, and the chief executive needs to be left to get along with that with the other CEOs. So I won't be supporting this.
Is it Councillor King? Councillor King, are you indicating you wish to speak? All I can see is an initial K with a hand up.
I've got my hand raised as well, Chair.
That initial might be me, Councillor Cleary.
In which case, I'll go to Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm somewhat astounded at Councillor Bailey not wanting to have the opportunity to discuss this issue properly, even if it's at the last minute. One of the key issues, as I mentioned in the previous amendment, is that we represent, the 30 of us represent every member of the electorate in Ryedale. This is what we were elected to do. And I find it quite astounding that anybody thinks we are not going to debate this as a council, as members. And I'm just really something of a loss to think that there are people who are saying, no, we're not going to discuss this as a council. We're not going to debate it. One of the key issues that this is done transparently and openly, which means it has to be at a proper council meeting with the public, with the opportunity of listening in or following it later. Yeah, just quite bizarre to me. So we've just got to go with this, because otherwise, are we really not going to have the chance to look at the final options? Thank you.
Councillor Ryby.
I agree with Councillor Potter. I find it bizarre we're not allowed to speak on and represent the people who voted us into council. I think Councillor Bailey saying if it was Ryedale's idea, it'd be no good. Well, I'm sorry, we are Ryedale and we represent Ryedale, and therefore we should speak what we think is right for the way that we represent the constituents. And so I'm disappointed in his attitude that, yeah, Ryedale is no good. The other thing is, if we delay it, that's making an assumption that everything's okay and we all agree it. So if we delay it to the very last minute, it gives us we may as well not bother, because you're going to say we can't amend it because there isn't time. So I will support the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. Can you tell me anywhere in this discussion this evening where it said that we're not going to debate it? All along we've said it will get debated. Chief Exec will present it and we will debate it as councillors. And I cannot understand where everybody's coming from. It will not get debated because we need to debate it. What concerns me is, if this document is too amended, does it have to go to the rest of the council for the amendments to be discussed? Because we've changed the documents prepared by a lot of other councils. So how is that going to be discussed when it's changed? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can members now put their hands down? Everybody who's put their hands up has spoken to the amendment. Please remove it. Does anybody else wish to speak for or against the amendment? No? In which case... Well, Councillor Joy, you will have the chance as proposer of the amendment to reply before going back to Councillor Duncan. Councillor Joy Andrews.
Thank you. Just in answer to Councillor Bailey, when he said that we wouldn't be able to put in what we wanted, this is the rider. This is our chance to speak about it. We will be all having our say, as Councillor Duncan has said, over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we will be having input into what we want to see in this document. And so therefore we will have input now, even though we couldn't have input on the First Amendment. We've just been told by the people we're paying what has to go into this report. So I do think that we should have a debate on it. And we'll probably, if we've all had input, we might all agree for once. I don't know, but I think this should be done in a public forum at a council meeting where the public, who it is affecting more so than anything else that's come over the last 50 years, because it is a change of democracy, local democracy, the whole shooting match. And I think we need to be seen to be discussing this in a public forum, even if it is at the very last minute, so that people then who have concerns and worries can listen and realise that we have had input into it. We have listened to people on the street and we have put our concerns and our ideas forward. And that should be done publicly. Thank you.
Before going back to Councillor Duncan, Councillor Thacker, you have put your hand up, but I am closing the debate on this amendment. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sunshine. No, sorry, I want to speak.
No, sorry, you missed your chance. I was quite clear that we were going back to the reply to the amendment.
You've had his hand on great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in responding to some of the points that have been raised there, I would just like to say that I think we just need to
Councillor Thackeray. You mute everybody? Hello?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll continue. I think it's just worth trying to understand where we go forward from here. And I think the key thing is that we, as 30 councillors, this document that KPMG produces, KPMG's piece of work, and we're going to submit that. That is the outline case. So government understand the geography and the outline detail of what we are proposing. Clearly, there are things which members have touched upon which need addressing. And I agree with some of the issues that have been raised by Councillor Clark and by others that we need an answer to. But in doing that, what we need to do is we need to say to our chief exec, here are the questions, here are the issues, here are the parameters, and here are the principles on which the final submission document should be made. What we can't do, and what is going to be a practical impossibility, is coming together on the 3rd of December to discuss something which may not be ready, which may not be something which we like, but other district councils may like. The key thing here is that we tell the chief executive what this final document needs to be, and it is her duty to ensure that she reflects that in terms of the content of the proposal. Meeting on December 3rd is going to be an issue because if you leave it right to the last minute, as has been touched on, clearly there's then no opportunity to revise. If you do it too early, then we're cutting ourselves short and there's going to be no document to present. Every other authority, and I've had confirmation now that Richmondshire has approved their document, so we are now the last to make a decision. 5 of those have approved the recommendations as written, and they've put faith in their chief executive to liaise, to discuss, and to ensure that the final case for change reflects the views of members of all councils. And that is not just Ryedale District Council, that is all councils. And we have to represent, we're talking here about over 200 elected representatives. And clearly, there is going to have to be discussions and negotiations at chief exec level and the leader level to ensure that everybody's views are represented in the final case. The important thing as well, I believe, is we have to ask ourselves, what is our aim as a council? I think our aim as a council is we want to have the very strongest proposal we possibly can. We want to give the proposal the best chance of success. And if that is the aim, then what we don't want to do is have a situation where we could be hindering rather than helping the people who are under immense pressure, the chief executive, senior officers, not just of our council, but all councils. Do we want to help them in this process or do we want to hinder them? And that doesn't mean democratic views not being heard and not being taken forward. It absolutely does mean that. We need to make our views, the principles, the parameters on which we want the chief executive to work, so that she can take those on board and work with the others. That's the only way in which we're going to produce a document where we're going to have, hopefully, 6 councils working together to produce the very strongest proposal that we can to ensure that the government minister can make the very best proposal and very best decision ultimately. So I feel that this is the wrong thing to do, and in terms of practicality, is going to be an issue. I also note that the amendment itself states to present. I'm not clear whether that is to present for decision or for discussion or for feedback. If it is simply to present it, I mean, whatever's ready at that stage could go forward. But if it is to decide a yes or a no, or to put further information in, that is not going to be practically possible. So I think, for me, this is the wrong thing to do. It's an unnecessary thing to do. And I think it's going to further hamstring the people who are really struggling at the moment to deal with this as it is. We're going to make that task yet more difficult. I've made the pledge, 100%, rock solid pledge, that all members of the council will be invited to take part. All members of the council will have views, and those views will be heard and will be taken forward by the chief executive in the next stage of this piece of work. So really, this is not the right course of action, and therefore I will be voting against the amendments that have been put forward.
Thank you. We're going to go to the vote. As before, vote by roll alphabetically. Can you be ready on the unmute button when it's your turn to speak, to say either for, against or abstain?
Chairman, I apologise for the interruption, but could we just make sure that our colleagues joining us on the phone have unmuted themselves, because we can't do that centrally, so we just need to make sure that they are actually present with us.
That's fine. Well, I've asked them to be ready to vote alphabetically by unmuting at that time. Councillor Joy Andrews, for, against or abstain? Councillor Andrews. Councillor Joy Andrews.
Councillors, please press 6 on your phone to unmute.
Councillor Joy Andrews, are you ready to vote?
Chair, it's star 6 on the phone, not just.
If you're on the phone, you have to press *6 to unmute yourself.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Andrews.
For.
Councillor Steve Arnold.
Against.
Councillor Bailey.
Against.
Councillor Braxton. Councillor Braxton. Councillor Braxton, are you wishing to vote? We'll come back to the end to Councillor Braxton at the end of the vote. Councillor Burr.
For.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Clark.
Sorry, Chairman, I've had a message from Carrie saying she can't unmute.
We'll come back to Councillor Clark at the end of the vote. Councillor Cleary, against. Councillor Cousins. Councillor Cousins. No. We'll come back. Councillor Delaney.
Against.
Councillor Docra.
Against.
Councillor Duncan.
Against.
Councillor Frank.
For.
Councillor Garbett Moore. Councillor Goodrick.
Against.
Councillor Graham.
Against.
Councillor Hope. Councillor Hope. No, we'll come back to Councillor Hope. Councillor Keel.
For.
Councillor King.
Against.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Against.
Councillor Mason.
For.
Councillor Middleton.
Against.
Councillor Oxley.
Against.
Councillor Potter.
For.
Councillor Rain.
For.
Councillor Raper.
Against.
Councillor Ryby.
For.
Councillor Thackeray.
For.
Councillor Wass.
For.
Councillor Windrus.
Against.
We'll go back to the Councillor Braxton. I can see you here. For, against, or abstain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Chair, may I remind councillors joining us on the phone to press *6 in order to unmute themselves.
Thank you. It's *6. Councillor Clark, if you wish to unmute yourself and vote.
Hello?
Hello, Councillor Clark. Your vote, please.
I've done nothing to the phone at all and I've been muted twice now.
Right. For, against, or abstain?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Cousins. No. Councillor Hope.
Chair, I shall call Councillor Hope and Councillor Cousins to get their vote now.
Thank you. What we'll do, members, we'll wait for those calls. We'll wait as long as we can, and then we'll get the numbers totted up. Thank you.
Chair, I have the vote of Councillor Hope and that is for. Chair, my apologies to Councillor Cousins is engaged. I will give him another try. Councillor Cousins, if you are able to hear us, if you could dial off for a moment, I will get your vote and then you can dial back in. We'll let you back into the conference.
We'll wait one more minute and then then I must declare the result. One more minute.
What's the vote as it stands, Chair?
There are 15 against. There are 14 for, depending on Councillor Cousins, it would be 15 all, depending if he voted for.
I'm sorry, Chair, I've tried 7 times and I'm unable to contact Councillor Cousins.
We will wait one more time, one more minute.
Can I suggest, Chair, maybe you consider what you would do and tell us what you would do if it was 15 all?
If it was 15 all, well, I will wait for the minute I've given.
You see my point, and then Councillor Cousins' votes could count at a later point, as it were. We had one of these on scrutiny when somebody disappeared, and we took their vote way later.
The vote as it stands is 15 against, 14 for. If Councillor Cousins had voted for, I would have cast my vote against. Right. We've waited for, we've given Councillor Cousins every opportunity. I think it's only fair to the rest of the membership that we move on. The amendment is defeated. We go back to the substantive vote then. Does anybody else who hasn't already spoken to the substantive vote, substantive motion, wish to speak to the substantive motion?
Yes, Chair.
You've already spoken to the substantive motion, Councillor Andrews.
That was before the amendment, Chair.
No, you've already spoken to the substantive motion. It's not been amended. You can't come back unless it's a matter of personal reply or another reason why you might speak twice. I don't believe you have indicated why you want to speak twice.
It's another reason to speak twice, Chair, in the light of the fact that 3 amendments have been lost.
Yeah, well, we're talking about the substantive motion to which you've already spoken. Councillor Burr, you haven't yet spoken to the substantive motion. Do you wish to speak now?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, obviously disappointed that the amendments to include all councillors getting even more involved have been lost. However, we are where we are. And as has rightly been pointed out, yesterday I did vote at North York County Council because I do believe that that proposal is far too big. And I actually feel that small is better. And we will be able to represent our electorate much better if we're smaller. I think that the bid has got a lot of flaws. There's things that need to be discussed, need to have the input of more members to get things right for our residents. However, we are being bounced into this, bullied into this, whatever you want to call it. However you want to say it, we have got to make a decision. And I've taken the view that what I would rather do is vote for it than do nothing, because at least if I can have a small input to try and make things better, I'd rather that than have nothing. So I am going to be voting for this, but as you all know, I really am not happy that we've been forced into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Goodrick, I have you. Councillor Raper, you have actually already spoken to the substantive motion. Councillor Goodrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had quite a bit to say on this tonight, and do you know what? This has gone on quite long enough, and I'm sure the general public have heard quite enough of what's been going on. But this is the biggest vote that this council will take in the last 40 years. And this decision should be far bigger than party politics or indeed whipped votes. It's my view I have a responsibility to act in what I believe is in the best interest of the residents I represent, both as a district councillor and as a county councillor. Yesterday I voted for the county proposal as I determined that this was the best option for our residents, and it provided the best savings, the best continuity of services, and it will also disaggregate some of our most outstanding services county if the district bid goes through. So I've got to look at this and think, what am I going to do? Because if I don't vote for this tonight, it removes the option for the rest of the council to have any input, and it removes the choice from the minister. So I will vote for this tonight, but very, very reluctantly. And I will write to the minister to make clear where my vote lies, because I do not want any ambiguity as a result of what I have to do tonight. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I don't see any other member wishing to speak to the substantive motion.
Yes,
I'm
please,
looking around. Councillor Mason, you have already spoken to the substantive motion. I'm going to go therefore back to Councillor. Councillor Clark.
Councillor Clark's trying to speak.
Councillor Clark, you have it was an amendment. So yes, please go ahead, Councillor Clark.
Well, I don't really know where to start. We've had a consensus that we want things as local. We've had consensus that we want Ryedale's view to be heard. But we've had a whipped vote tonight, clearly a whipped vote, to make sure that our voice is not heard. We can have fireside chats and we can be asked our opinion, but then that opinion has got to fit in with this new mega council that has been created by Councillor Duncan and his colleagues. So on that basis, I can't see any case at all for voting for this option, because all we're trying to do is set up two mega councils as opposed to a North Yorkshire council that sits there. And if our amendments had been passed tonight, I was more than happy to work at this, but work at it, not just having a passing consultation. And as the chief executive is going to decide, our leader needs to be aware that whipping his own group into voting is not very smart, because the same fate will befall him as happened to Councillor Arnold's, whose group has dropped from 7 to 3, and Councillor Duncan, who was should have taken control of the council May of last year, has now gone down from 12 to 11. So on that basis, I can't see any point in pretending that Ryedale's view will carry any weight in this position at all. We are settling down into having a mass view coming from a collection of group leaders and chief executives. We will have our chance to say what Lindsay Burr is saying, that she's voting for it to have our chance. We'll have 10 weeks of government consultation, and then we will be able to say, direct to the government, what we want. Not what we as individuals want, but what we want for the people that we represent. And the KPMG document does not look at local plans, does not look at planning, does not look at community services, does not look at grants, and even tells us that we can't have, in the structure we're putting forward, local area committees, because it would mean a change of legislation. The fact that those area committees have existed for decades around the country appears to have gone by. It is a poor document, and I think it was Councillor Ryby who said, because we've paid money for it, if it's a poor document, doesn't mean we have to support it. So on that basis, I'm now totally opposed to it. Not because it isn't worth considering. The government is already going to be considering it. But us pretending that as members we're going to have input is nearly as ludicrous.
3 minutes, Councillor Clark.
It's nearly as ludicrous, Chair, as us believing we drew up the document that we've got in front of us. Thank you.
I have only Councillor Potter, and then I'll return to Councillor Duncan to reply to the debate. Councillor Potter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just remind members that there was a member brief last week where there were only 2 Conservatives present, and that didn't include Councillor Duncan. So, unfortunately, he wasn't listening to the views of members on that occasion. Now, the amendment refers to a report, or this motion that we're about to vote on refers to a report that appears to be based largely on guesswork. It's sort of estimates of estimates rather than hard evidence. I have pointed this out before, and I don't want to express my support, strong or otherwise, to such a poor proposal. And I'm sure everybody will be aware that the government stated that they would not impose this onto local councils, but it would need to be strongly supported. So on a report that's largely based on guesswork, I'm certainly not going to express my support. We've been refused any semblance of a proper say on the final proposals by a whip vote, so I shall certainly not be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you have your chance to reply to the debate.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to come back on some of the points. I'd like to say thank you to Councillor Keel and Councillor Byrne and others who I think have expressed a pragmatic way of dealing with this. We all know this is not an ideal situation, and perhaps we'd rather not be making this choice at the moment. But this is the situation that we have, and as I stated earlier, we have one question on the table, which is, do we submit this proposal or don't we? That is the question which we need to answer this evening as members. Do we walk away and do nothing? Do we bury our head in the sand and do nothing to speak on behalf of our residents and our staff, local businesses, our partners and others? Do we want to have no role whatsoever in this process? And I think it's worth picking up on the points that have been raised by Councillor Clark, who clearly seems to have a much better insight into the workings of the Conservative group than I do. And I think it's worth also pointing out that he mentions fireside chats. I think it's also worth asking him, for the Liberal group, to be honest. What do they actually think in this, and why do they think it? And I think actually this has got nothing to do with the contents of the report, nothing to do with the amendments that we've discussed this evening. It has everything to do with Councillor Clark's long-term ambition to push for the creation of a unitary authority covering all of North Yorkshire. He's requested for us to vote for that on several occasions. He mentions fireside chats, and he quizzed me at extensive length at the extraordinary meeting on Monday about the discussions that I had with County Council. And I think it's actually worth Councillor Clark and time for Councillor Clark to be honest about the discussions that he has had with the County Council. And in particular, what has been said in secret in his discussions with the leader of North Yorkshire County Council. Because I think members deserve to know what promises he has made to the leader of the County Council, what instructions he has received from the leader of the County Council and the County Council leadership, what involvement he had in preparation of the questions which were put forward to this council, Ryedale District Council, on Monday. And I believe that the members of this council deserve to know that Councillor Clark is not coming here to represent the people of Ryedale, the people that elected him, but as an agent of the County Council. And I think it's very clear that what this is about his ambition to create a county-wide unitary, not to look at what actually is in the interests of Ryedale District Council and the people of Ryedale, which is very much to submit a document to be part of this process, regardless of which bid you like and which bid you prefer, for Ryedale to keep a seat at the table and to be able to contribute from this point forwards. That is really the key issue. We may not like it, we may not want it. However, we have very little choice other than to submit the proposal and to ensure that we continue to have a voice long into the future.
Thank you. Before going to the vote, I've had a request from Mr. Kitson, our legal advisor, to speak, to forward some advice. David, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it might be worthwhile clarifying the advice that I gave previously in relation to Councillor Clark's first proposed amendment. That advice, I stand by that advice, but I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding of that. So I just wanted to provide some clarity. So what I'm saying is that the extraordinary meeting, which is this meeting, has before it a motion to submit the proposal as set out in the case for change prepared by KPMG. So seeking to change that proposal by adding in that it should include local delivery units, which are a separate option in that KPMG document, is to change the proposal, and therefore that itself negates the question whether or not to put the proposal forward as set out in the case for change. It would also be contrary to what was considered appropriate by the group of districts and boroughs, and as we've heard, 5 of them have approved that case for change. That's not to say the council can't submit something different, but that cannot be in consequence of an amendment to this motion being considered tonight, as it would negate it. So as I said, what Councillor Clark's proposing sounds like an area committee type arrangement as part of an east-west proposal. That's something that can be added to the finer details submitted in the final proposal. It's about, as I say, the finer details of governance of a unitary if created. An area committee is different to a local delivery unit. So I will, of course, provide the advice in writing as requested, but I hope, Chair, that has given some clarity, and I apologise if there was any confusion about what I was saying.
Thank you for that. Members, if
Chair,
you prepare...
can I have a very brief to save an awful lot of time and correspondence down
Councillor
the track?
Clark. Well, I think I've already asked that it will be in writing, but Councillor Clark,
Yes,
I will
I understand that, Chair.
reply.
It in no way in the proposed amendment refers to area committees. My point was that I made when we were discussing it was area committees are in fact local. Area committees are in fact local delivery units, and the amendment does not amend the KPMG report. It just amends our submission. So we would have been sending in the KPMG report and a request that local services for local people are delivered by local councillors. And we've seen tonight that Ryedale Council or the controlling groups don't wish to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll go to the vote. The clerks are ready for the vote. We'll go alphabetically by roll call. Please be ready to unmute yourself at the appropriate moment. I'm going to start with Councillor Joy Andrews. For, against or abstain? Councillor Joy Andrews.
Excuse me, Chair. Councillor Rain here.
Hello.
Can you clarify what we're voting for? Can you just...
We're voting on the substantive motion, which is the recommendation on the agenda papers 2.1 A and B. The vote as proposed, as moved by Councillor Duncan. Councillor Joy Andrews, are you ready to vote?
Again. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you. Councillor Paul Andrews.
Chair, I would have supported this if it hadn't been for the autocratic way that we're going about this. So I'm afraid I have to abstain.
Thank you.
I think the way
Councillor Arnold.
it is disgusting.
Councillor Arnold. Councillor Arnold, are you voting? We'll come back to Councillor Arnold. Councillor Bailey.
Give him a minute.
Councillor Brackstone.
Against.
Councillor Burr.
For.
Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Cleary, 4. Councillor Cousins. Have we got Councillor Cousins back with us? I'll come back to Councillor Cousins. Councillor Delaney.
4.
Councillor Dockra.
4.
Councillor Duncan.
4.
Councillor Frank. Councillor Frank, I think you're still with us. 4 against or abstain. I'll come back to Councillor Frank. Councillor Garbett-Moore.
Chair, it's Steve here. I've had a message from another councillor basically saying they can't access their screen. I'm wondering if the officers...
Thank you. Well, we'll go down the list. Thank you.
I wonder if the officers can unmute everyone so they can
Councillor Garbett-Moore.
4.
Councillor Goodrick.
4.
Councillor Graham.
4.
Councillor Hope. No, we'll come back to Councillor Hope. Councillor Keel.
4.
Councillor King.
4.
Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Mackenzie. We'll come back to Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Mason.
4.
Councillor Middleton. Councillor Middleton.
You can't
come back to
access their screen.
Well, just one at a time, please, Councillor Mason. I'll come back to them if we can't get them first time round. Councillor Oxley.
4.
Councillor Potter.
Against.
Councillor Rain.
4.
Councillor Raper. Councillor Raper. Come back to Councillor Raper. Councillor Ryby.
Against.
Councillor Thackeray.
Against.
Councillor Wass.
Against.
Councillor Windrus. You need to unmute yourself. Snowy, you need to unmute yourself. Councillor Windrus, I can see you. If you wish to vote for, put your thumb up. Thank you, I got that. We'll go back to the top of the list where we've got people missing from the vote. Councillor Arnold.
Councillor Arnold can't get back in, Mr. Chairman. I think he's hoping that someone could call him to take his vote. The same for Councillor Windrus.
I will call Councillor Arnold and Councillor Windrus now.
Councillor Arnold, I think, just is there, but he was putting he's raising his thumb, I believe. Yeah.
And
so who was Who's that advising me on the thumb up? I need to understand who's
Apologies.
advising me of that.
This is David Kitson, Chair.
Thank you,
Sorry.
David. I will take Councillor Arnold as a 4. Going down, Councillor Cousins. If the officers could add Councillor Cousins to their list. Councillor Frank.
Councillor Raper as well, Mr. Chairman, is in need of a phone call, and I'm not quite sure the status of Councillor Mackenzie.
Right.
Councillor Cousins Louise has commented on the chat that she's spoken to Cousins and he is a 4, and it is on the chat.
That was a previous vote.
Thank you. I'll ask Louise, is that correct that Councillor Cousins has voted for?
That was the previous vote, was it, Chair?
Yeah.
Can I confirm, Chair, that was the previous vote? I have spoken
Right, that's
to
fine,
Councillor
thank you.
Windrus.
We're still waiting for his...
Sorry.
Officers were waiting for votes for the substantive vote for Councillors Cousins, Frank, Hope, Mackenzie, Middleton and Raper. Are you able to call those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members, please?
Yes, doing that now.
Thank you.
I just confirmed that Councillor Windrus was a 4, and I'm calling Councillor Cousins, Frank, Hope, Mackenzie, Middleton and Raper now.
That's brilliant, thank you.
May I suggest, Chair, you go back to the previous vote, which I think is now 15 all. Did you hear, Chair?
I did. We'd already settled that insofar as Councillor Cousins wasn't able to vote at the time. The vote, I think, didn't come in time. So the amendment was defeated 15-14.
I don't think, Chair, that is at all fair. The meeting is still going on.
Well, I'm not sure. Yeah, I do understand the problem with votes coming in and timing of. Therefore, I will say that we'll accept Councillor Cousins. Sorry, there was an interruption there. Can I confirm, therefore, that it was 15 all for the last amendment, and therefore I will cast as chairman against the amendment. The amendment remains defeated.
Yeah, that's why I asked you at the time, Chair. So as to be fair to Councillor Cousins.
I understand that, and I'm not sure when the vote came in, but it's as well that it's dealt with that way. So we're waiting. We'll wait a little longer for Councillors Cousins, Frank, Hope, Mackenzie, Middleton, and Raper's votes.
I've just spoken to John Mackenzie. He's waiting to vote. He's waiting for them to call him.
I can only do one of the.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Councillor Hope, good evening again.
Good evening, yeah. 4.
4, thank you.
Councillor Middleton, can I take your vote, for or against? It's 4, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raper, I understand, is voting for. We've got Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Frank and Councillor Cousins to find out.
You can see why the House of Commons on this system still sticks with, as far as possible, lobby voting, can't you?
I'm really pleased to give the one-word answer, yes.
Choose a better system than Teams, to be honest.
Can the officers indicate whether we have contact with any of these 3? If there's no contact with them,
Apologies, Chair, this is taking a while. We're struggling to get hold of Councillor Mackenzie. The line is engaged. I'm just calling Councillor Frank now.
Thank you.
If we're in Ryedale House, I'd be saying we should have bought the deer equipment, but I don't think it applies to this.
The vote as it stands is 19-4. We are waiting for 3 votes, which would not make the difference. 19-4, 7 against and 1 abstention as we stand. So the 3 votes that we're looking for would not make the difference against. But I will wait for another couple of minutes just to allow people to have the vote.
Chair Mackenzie's 4.
Thank you.
Chair, I'm sorry, I can't get hold of Councillor Cousins.
Did we
Line
have
is
the
engaged.
Did we have the vote for Councillor Frank?
Councillor Frank is 4.
Thank you. Can I have the final? We will go to the vote now because the vote has been won, but we'll get the final numbers for the record.
I think, Chair, it'd be fair even if you carried that on to tomorrow as adjusting the numbers, because it's a nice clear difference. But I think the people have the right to.
Indeed, I'm going to wait for the final numbers clarification. The numbers are 21-4, 7 against, 1 abstain. The motion is carried. That brings us to the end of the business for the evening. And the meeting is closed, and I thank you all for your attendance and forbearance, and I will see you at the next meeting one way or the other. For those of you who are at home, thank you very much. For those of you who are not at home, travel safely home. The meeting is ended. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.